One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 21-40. Chapter 21 Pirates. When the two of them turned back, they saw Moria, who was blonde, move a reclining chair, and then sat quietly on it, looking at the sea in front of her. The breeze blew her hair, revealing her beautiful profile. "Why are you here?" Dylan said incredulously, and Yang Qing's face was also solemn. "It's not surprising here." What puzzled the two of them was that they didn't find Moria. You must know that although the two of them are not absolutely powerful, they also possess a certain amount of strength, and their perception ability is naturally very good, especially Yang Qing. With the help of the control fruit, he can tell everything around him like the back of his hand. However, they didn't discover the latter until Moria spoke up, which was beyond imagination. Could it be that Moria also has great power? Driving towards the East Sanjo wind, you will reach the next town. Moria ignored the two of them, just said a word indifferently, and then continued to stare at the sea in a daze. Yang Qing and Dylan's looked at each other and felt a little surprised. "She didn't read today. It's not scientific, it's just that the sun is coming out of the west." The boat changed direction, the sails swelled up, and began to sail into the wind. In this way, the wooden boat was getting further and further away from Shigu town. Yang Qing and Dylan's took turns taking the helm, while Moria was lying on the chair, in a daze, not knowing what she was thinking. "Dylan's is going to fruit. I want to eat grilled fish." Yang Qing sat on the bow and said boringly. Dylan's hummed, took a step to the mast, then looked down at the sea for a while, then the dagger trembled, and the next moment, there was a fish on the tip of his dagger. Seeing this scene, Yang Qing patted his forehead and was speechless. "Nima, with such fruit, what interest is there in your life?" Moria was still silently in a daze, like a puppet. People could not help but ignore her existence. The wooden boat was driving on the sea, and before I knew it, 3 days had passed. The boring and tedious sea travel made them very boring, and on this day, a huge shadow of a ship finally appeared on the boundless sea. First the sails, and then the hull, appearing little by little, getting closer little by little. "Pirates." Yang Qing narrowed his eyes, Dylan's trembled, and came to Yang Qing's side with a dignified expression. "It's a pirate." The evil pirate flag fluttered fiercely in the wind, with the slightest killing intent permeating the air. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Moria stood on the edge of the boat, looking at the beating fish in the sea, quietly and elegantly. The pirate ship was getting closer and closer, and a stench came over, which made the three of them couldn't help frowning. Then there are the stout howls of men, with singing and vulgar abuse. The two boats passed by. On the pirate boat, the ferocious men looked at Yang Qing and Dylan's with evil smiles, but ignored them, but the blade-like eyes made their eyes flash slightly, and Moria, as if was completely ignored. Soon, the two ships were already staggered. At the moment when the two boats were about to separate, Yang Qing and Dylan's glanced at the stern of the boat inadvertently, and then their expressions changed dramatically in an instant, and Moria's peaceful expression changed even more. There, people bound by ropes knelt in the back, with despairing faces, like pigs and sheep to be slaughtered, while stout pirates stood there, holding long knives, with hideous faces. "The harvest is really good this time. These people are sold as slaves, and they can make some money. In 3 more days, we will be able to reach Shigu town, then loot and get some slaves. Ha ha ha, it's great to be a pirate. It's really the biggest bet in my life to have girls and make money." The pirates laughed recklessly and celebrated this harvest. On the wooden boat that had been separated from the pirate ship by nearly 10 meters, Yang Qing and Dylan's lowered their heads, their long broken hair blocked their faces, but Moria clearly felt the front of her, the two bodies. An astonishing killing intent was uploaded. She was a little surprised. Could it be that these two young men who didn't look big had amazing strength? Just like her. Otherwise, why would they not only be not afraid of these vicious pirates, but would instead show such crazy killing intent? "They are going to Shigu town." Yang Qing raised her head, her originally smiling face turned cold. "Oh, I heard." Dylan's licked the corner of his mouth, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Kill them and let them know why we are called Death God. Yang Qing said. Hey, Dylan's took a step forward with a bloodthirsty smile on his face, then disappeared. Yang Qing jumped lightly, jumped onto the stern, and then jumped again. The person had already gone to the opposite pirate ship. Moria was curious. She looked towards the middle of the deck, where a blood-colored flag was lying quietly. On the flag was a gloomy skeleton face mocking silently. A bone claw stretched out on the left, and in the claw held along the side, as if waiting to harvest life. This is the pirate flag that Yang Qing and Dylan's have worked hard to come up with. Their drawing skills are not very good, but they have completed the general outline. At this moment, the two have already boarded the ship of this unknown pirate group. The sturdy pirate stood at the stern with a long knife to guard the slaves, and the place where the two appeared was also here. Dylan's appeared after a tremor in the space, and Yang Qing fell from the sky. After it was on the deck, the huge impact caused a strong impact, smashing the deck into a large piece. Who are you? The ferocious giant man saw the two of them, his expression changed, and he rushed over with a knife. Kill them, the people on this ship, and leave no one behind. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Their life, this captain took it. The Death God pirates finally gave their first order in this first official battle. Along with ruthlessness and killing, a bloody dance began. Dylan's had an indifferent expression on his face. No pirate on board could stop him. He walked slowly, with a steady pace, when a pirate rushed up and slashed at him with a knife. Cut it down with a knife, and actually cut through Dylan's body, making the pirates' faces show fear. What is this? I can't hit him. Through, what did I see? The knife cut through his body. Devil fruit. He is a devil. My God. The dagger slid across easily, a smear of blood spurted out, and the screaming stopped abruptly. More and more pirates began to gather, but within a while, Yang Qing and Dylan's were surrounded. Dylan's didn't care. The dagger in his hand trembled slightly, and every time it trembled, the pirates surrounding them would let out a scream, and then fell to the ground. Everyone on the pirate ship fell into panic. The boy on the opposite side was simply not human. His abilities were so amazing that he had never seen it before. Here comes the captain! Here comes the captain! Just then, a surprised cry came from behind the crowd. Chapter 22 Nico Robin. Dylan shook his hand and screamed again. Yang Qing squinted his eyes and raised his hand. Dylan shook his hand and retracted his dagger. Looking at the fearful pirates, he sneered. Accompanied by the steady footsteps and the smell of a heavy man, a middle-aged man walked over from the separated crowd. He had a bushy beard on his mouth, a western long sword hung on his right waist, and a revolver on his left waist. The pistol, with the captain's hat on his head, looks very imposing. I'm Abby, with a bounty of 35 million, the captain of the Babylonian pirate ship. Abby stood in front of Yang Qing and Dylan's and introduced himself in a deep voice. Dylan's looked at Yang Qing. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and became silent. Everyone on the boat could see that the terrifying Dylan's in their eyes didn't even take matters into his own hands. It was this little boy who was in charge of the two. Nima, are you kidding me? When did the child become so mad? Finally, Yang Qing opened his mouth under the stares of everyone. A cold chill flashed in his eyes, a bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face, and everyone with a cold voice shuddered. No one left. Ha, I knew it. Dylan's laughed, took a step forward, and rushed into the crowd on the opposite side. Abby and Yang Qing began to look at each other. Under Abby's gaze, Yang Qing picked up a heavy machete from the ground and stood upright. Come on, either you die or I die. Abby squinted his eyes and drew the long sword from his waist. A scream of screams began to be heard from the rear, and Dylan's was like a wolf entering the flock, and it was almost unstoppable. His hostility and his killing intent put these people under terrible pressure. Dylan's, who has a bounty of 50 million Baileys, is not as powerful as a human being compared to these people. Your friends are dying, you don't look angry at all. Yang Qing laughed. At the moment of going out to sea, everyone has a dead self in their hearts. Abby picked up the western sword with one hand and aimed it at Yangqing. Ha ha. Yangqing laughed. He could see that the captain in front of him was a merciless person. I don't care about my own life, let alone them. With a wave of Abby's sword, a strong wind blew towards Yangqing. When Yangqing blocked it, and in the latter's surprised eyes, he turned the machete in his hand into a ray of light and slashed across Abby's chest. Poof! Blood flowed, and within a round, Abby was injured. You are very strong. A person as strong as you can't be an unknown person, Abby said solemnly, ignoring the bleeding chest. This is a man of great will, who can endure great pain. It's a pity, I'm a nameless person. Yangqing smiled and cut down with a knife without any fancy. Bang! Abby raised the slender western sword to block it, but the powerful force pressed him to the waist, his legs sank into the wooden deck, and the blood in his chest became more urgent. Isn't it over yet? At this moment, Dylan's appeared behind Yangqing. Abby's face changed, and he glanced at Dylan's. After this glance, his whole person became incredible. I saw behind Dylan's, one after another corpses were lying on the boat, blood stained red. On the deck, the whole ship began to smell of blood. Some sharks smell this enticing smell and have already started to come. Dyrans, you are the ghost Dylan's. How is that possible? How can you, the big pirate in the Great Waterway, come to our Junhai? Abby shouted, a look of fear appeared on his face. He is only 35 million pirates. His 35 million is more because of his looting and evil deeds than his strength, and the 50 million Dylans in front of him is the real reason for those whose strength is rewarded, their strength is simply not at the same level. Captain, kill him, we should set sail. Dylans waved his hand boredly. Ha ha tilde. Yangqing threw the long knife to get blood, and the blood droplet threw out with strong force, and even knocked the wooden board out of the hole. Abby's face changed again. Captain. The terrifying Dylans even has a captain. Who is this boy? You. He just spit out a word. A flash of sword light flashed. He hurriedly raised his sword to block again, but, with a poof, his eyes were already plunged into darkness. The western sword was cut in half, and Abby was divided into two halves. That knife, too fast, too fierce, too strong. It's better to solve it early, waste of time. Dylans complained. Ha ha. Yangqing smiled. It's this attitude again, dare to speak. Dylans said. Hee hee. Ha ha your face. The two came to the stern and looked at each other. Dylans shot, broke the ropes of all the slaves, and said, you guys go. The world is broad, and human beings are free. Perhaps, this world should not have slaves. Yangqing opened his mouth. Dylans looked at him, his eyes flickered, he turned out to be a slave too, his slave. But at this moment, it was already his crew, his brother. Captain, what kind of person are you? Everyone stood up excitedly, then glanced at the boat, they were all stunned, and then looked at the two of them with fear, and a powerful force. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. The amount is terrifying. Yangqing and Dylans didn't care either and were about to leave. At this moment, a small voice came out. Can I go with you? The voice was small, with fear and panic. Yangqing turned around, but Dylans ignored it. They have their own business, it's good to rescue these people, and they have no interest in doing other things. He thought that Yangqing would smile and leave, but what he didn't expect happened. Okay, can you tell me your name? Yangqing looked back at the little girl who was about her own age and said with a smile. My name is Robin, Nicole Robin. The little girl was a little scared, but she still mustered up the courage to say her real name. She used a fake name countless times, but this time, she was under the gaze of the teenager, said his real name. Oh, Robin, come on, you'll be with us from now on. The young man waved his hand indifferently, as if he had never heard the name at all. Dyrans, bring her to our ship, and she will live with us from now on. Dylans was speechless, and just about to say something back. he saw that Yang Qing had floated away and arrived on the wooden boat. "Come on, hold me tight, and we'll go right over there." Robin complied, and in her stunned expression, the next moment, they were already on the wooden boat. "Are you human?" "Ah. Ha 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 ha, death god pirates, set sail, set off." The hideous pirate flag began to rise slowly, replacing the top of the mast that was originally empty. Chapter 23 The Ship. The sea breeze, seagulls, waves, and the breath of the sea rushed towards Yang Qing's face. He closed his eyes in intoxication, enjoying the sunny weather on the sea, and he wanted to sleep. This lazy taste, lazy feeling, very suitable for sleeping. Moria lay quietly on the rocking chair on the deck, with Erlang's legs crossed, her delicate toes revealed playfully from her pink ribbon sandals, her slender legs glowed milky white under the sunlight, and then grew larger. The legs are covered by pink short skirts. The sun shines, giving her a golden glow. At this moment, Mariah looks like a quiet little princess. Boom. Dylan swallowed, his eyes dull. Why did he not find Moria so attractive after 3 years? It's just bubbling beautifully. Little Robin stood aside and saw Dylan's pig-like appearance. Although he was still timid, he quietly revealed a look of contempt. The book in Mariah's hand quietly opened, and reached the next page. The little princess's expression was focused, and she didn't notice Dylan's expression at all, or in other words, she wouldn't care even if she noticed. Just a mortal. Yang Qing lazily closed his eyes and breathed in the smell of the sea. Let the wooden boat go in an unknown direction. Anyway, Dylan's is in charge of controlling the boat, and Moria is instructed. He can be lazy. The smell of freedom. Yang Qing was very comfortable, he felt his whole body relaxed. This year, he is 8 years old, and his physical age is very young, but his mental age is already in his 20s. The suppressed life in the previous life was completely liberated after coming to this world. This feeling made him sincerely infatuated. Friendship, blood, and feelings were perfectly released here. Without the indifference and reality of his previous life, he breathed freedom. Don't look at it. If you look at the boat again, you will go to the windlass belt. Besides, your expression is so disgusting. Lance was stunned for a moment, and his face flushed immediately. The rudder is a third of the way to the southeast, and we will be on the next island before night. The indifferent words represent the demeanor of Goddess Moria. Although he is still young, his cold temperament and high cold momentum immediately conquered Dylan's and little Robin. Dylan's heart was beating violently, and then he threw the rudder to the southeast by a third at a very fast speed, letting the sails rise under the action of the air, and the speed of the ship immediately increased. After all this was done, Dylan's let out a long breath just now, and the violently undulating heart slowly calmed down. What's going on? Suddenly, I feel like I've seen a goddess. Dylan's was still in shock, and then murmured in a low voice, how could I fall in love with a terrifying Shweba? It's impossible, absolutely impossible. If Dylan's was in a trance, then little Robin felt warmth on Moria's body, and she stepped forward cautiously. Sister, what book did you read? After that, Moria gently closed the thick book in her hand, and then looked at Robin calmly. Nicole Robin, the bounty is 79 million, I can't imagine you, a child under 10 years old. How did you get such a high reward? Because, you don't seem to have any strength, do you? Dylan's just came out, and when he heard Moria's evaluation, his face immediately turned black, the corners of his mouth trembled, and after shaking a few times, he gave up his plan to do something and fought against Moria. He didn't have the courage. The combination of a scholar and a goddess is terrifying, I'd better keep her away. Me, little Robin was a little scared. She had experienced too much darkness and no longer trusted anyone, not to mention the woman in front of her recognized her identity at a glance. Well, you two get along very well. At this moment, Yang Qing, who woke up, shouted, he swayed and came to the deck with a sweet smile, Dylan's, I want to eat, I'm hungry. Also, little Robin, don't get along with Shweba, the pressure will be great. His horizontal thrust eased the awkward atmosphere at the scene immediately. Dylan's face was dark, watching Yang Qing squeeze his fists and grit his teeth. Are you taking me as a nanny? I'm the ghost Dylan's with a bounty of 50 million. Stupid mortal. Hurry up, I want to eat. You want to kill the great Tianlong man Lucifer. Does the saint starve to death? The consequences are very serious. Yang Qing said rascally. Dylan's face turned even darker. He took out his dagger helplessly and walked towards the sea. His voice was extremely disgusting. There is no food, only fish, I can't cook. Only little Robin was left standing there like a fossil. She was shocked by the 3 words, Dragon Man, in Yang Qing's mouth. You are a heavenly dragon. Crack. Facing the latter's wide-open mouth, Bah! Yang Qing had a bright smile on his face, patted the latter's shoulder and said, well, it's just a joke, don't be afraid. Moria adjusted her glasses, a ray of light flashed in her eyes, she lowered her head and continued to read her book. 3 hours later, arrive at Longonabo Island in Junhai. It's just right, we can do some supplies, our ship has nothing left. Yang Qing said with a smile, and then he took Robin and sat on the deck together. The sea below was turbulent, and little Robin was pulled by Yang Qing to sit on the mast, so scared that his tears almost came out, while Yang Qing just shouted loudly. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Laugh. Why didn't I find out before that he is so wicked? Dylan's looked at Yang Qing with a speechless expression while carrying the huge deep-sea fish. Moria flipped through the book and said nothing. Okay. Dylan spread his hands and carried the fish to the kitchen, I'm a babysitter. On the mast, the two were close to each other. Robin's little hand grabbed the corner of Yang Qing's clothes, and he would not let go if he died. This place was too high and too close to the sea, and it would fall off if he was not careful. Chapter 24 Longo Napo Island. Robin. Suddenly, Yang Qing said seriously. Robin said in a low voice, tears almost coming out. It's been a long time, so close to one person, right? Yang Qing said softly with a smile. After saying a sentence, he felt that the whole body of the person beside him was stiff, and the hand holding the corner of his clothes was even harder. I'm afraid. Yang Qing didn't turn to his side. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw the face of the girl beside him. Right now, 2 lines of tears were flowing down, and the corners of his mouth were constantly shaking. With me here, don't be afraid. He. Robin laughed and cried, making a series of weird noises. Tired he. Yang Qing loudly moved towards the sea, and also called out this weird laughter. His face was full of laughter, and then he burst out laughing. Tears came out of Robin's laugh, and when she looked at Yang Qing, something else appeared in her eyes. She faintly thought of what the tall giant said. The sea is boundless. One day, you will definitely find a partner to protect you. People are not destined to be alone in this world. Come here. Saren's words echoed in his mind, and Robin's tears couldn't stop. An arm gently wrapped around her shoulder, very hard. Cry when it hurts. Yang Qing said softly, crying even louder. The pirate flag swayed in the wind, the sickle on the skull shone with icy cold light in the sun, and the intermittent cries came from the ship, adding a strange feeling to the ship. What's wrong with these 2 people? One is crying and the other is laughing. Dylan's came out with a plate bigger than himself and asked curiously. On the plate was the steaming boiled fish, and the aroma spread to the outside. Yang Qing, who was sitting on the mast of the boat, immediately smelled it, and pulled Robin, whose face was full of tears, and ran towards it. I smelled the smell of boiled fish, starved to death. Yang Qing shouted. Robin's face was full of tears, and when he was forced to see the 2 people with strange faces, his face was immediately ashamed. Red. Eat quickly, Dylan's, where's the wine? Where's the wine? Yang Qing shouted. Have you forgotten? You've already finished drinking the wine, the night before you set sail. Also, you're a little kid under 10 years old, and you still drink. Dylan's patted his forehead and said speechlessly. Didn't I, Lucifer, still be your captain? Are you not convinced? Yang Qing laughed. Foo. Dylan shook his hand helplessly. The four of them started to eat. Robin and Moria were quiet, and they ate quietly. On the other hand, Yang Qing and Dylan's were constantly arguing, and even at the end, they began to compete to see who can eat faster and eat more. Two mortals. Moria issued a goddess evaluation, which made Robin snicker. So what are we going to do next? After the 4-meter-long big fish was eliminated by the four, Dylan wiped his mouth gracefully and asked Yang Qing. What? Yang Qing stood up and looked at the faintly visible island ahead. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. It's very simple. Do everything a pirate should do. Hit, smash, snatch. He shook his fist violently, speaking very forcefully. Dylan covered his forehead. Moria left the seat. Only little Robin rolled his eyes, looked at Yang Qing without speaking, but the smile on his face was blooming. I'm serious, Yang Qing said solemnly to meet little Robin's eyes. He. Robin smiled and ran away. The pirate ship moved forward quietly, getting closer and closer to the island. Small wooden boats quietly rowed across the sea, leaving a shallow mark on the sea. What island is Longo coming from? There was no smile on Yang Qing's face, and his tone was a little cold. Dylan stood aside, looking at the huge island in front of him, a fierce light flashing in his eyes. Longonabo Island. The name is ugly, and it's a mouthful. Yang Qing jumped up to the bow and stared straight ahead. Dylan rolled his eyes, too lazy to pay attention to the former. He felt that this brother who was suffering in life and death seemed to have changed since he set sail. 1,000 meters ahead is the harbor. The two of them stood in the bow position. Their bodies looked relaxed, but in fact they had already entered a vigilant posture, and their muscles were even more tensed. Longo Napo Island, the famous pirate island in Jinhei. Moria pushed her glasses, and a ray of light flashed on the lenses. Longo Nabo Island, at the port, a large number of pirate ships gather here. At a glance, the darkness was overwhelming, almost occupying a large area in the port. On the decks of these pirate ships, there are more or less tall pirates with ferocious faces, leaning lazily on the deck, and resting with half-closed eyes. These numerous pirate ships converge with a huge group of pirates to form a mixed island. The entire island was filled with blood and violence. Before landing on the island, all the death god pirates standing on the boat felt a rush of blood and rain. It was a rough, brutal, vicious pirate smell. In addition, among these pirates, there are quite a few heads with a bounty of 40 million to 50 million. Moria stood aside and said lightly, she seemed to know everything very well. Yang Qing and Dylan nodded, and then in the eyes of Dylan, Yang Qing took out a black room in the bedroom. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Robe, and then enveloped himself in it. Throw it to the other three, one for each. Put them all on. Under the black robe, Yang Qing's low voice came out, which seemed mysterious and cold. The three of them froze for a moment, looked at each other and put it on, covering their small body. Because our overall age is relatively young, hiding in the robe can indeed avoid a lot of trouble. Moria's voice came from the black robe. Today, Moria, you seem to have a lot of words. Yang Qing's voice came out, appearing more serious and less playful. Captain, what should we do? Robin's young voice also came out, looking a little excited. What do I do? Didn't I say it long ago? Beat, smash, snatch. Dylan's cold voice came out. He finally knew at this moment that the voice under the black robe was really serious. Not bad. The wooden boat gradually approached the island area, and then stopped on the shore. The pirate flag on the boat fluttered in the wind, immediately attracting the attention of a large number of pirates. Hey, there's another pirate ship here. The pirate flag is very unfamiliar. It doesn't seem to be famous at all. It's interesting, the newbie pirates who have no strength dare to come to this island. I decided to give them some color and see. Chapter 25. Can I get a seat? On Longonabo Island, near the harbor, there is an open-air pub. This conversation came from the tavern. More than a dozen burly men were sitting on the seats, drinking rum, and their beards were full of crystal wine beads, which made them look particularly hideous and rude. Boom blah blah. After drinking a large glass of wine in one breath, the person sitting at the outermost suddenly stood up. He is tall and burly, standing up to 2.3 meters, it looks like a small tower, and his strong muscles are even more raised. There. Takis, give them a good look at these newcomers. The big man stood up, swayed his body, and then walked hideously towards the shore. The large pirates in the back began to boo, and the scene suddenly became lively. Ha ha ha, Takis with a bounty of 5 million, these newcomers are finished. It's really cruel. Facing the young rookie who just debuted, Takis is going to shoot. Boring people. Some people laughed excitedly and drank several sips of wine again in a row. Some people felt bored and lay on the table listlessly, lacking even interest in taking a look. It seems that we are very popular. On the wooden boat, the flag of the skull swayed in the wind, and the brand new black sickle seemed to reflect a cold light. Well, that's right. Dylan's eyes flashed with chills. He pulled out the dagger from his waist, and after turning it around his fingers a few times, he returned to his waist again. Killed? Dylan asked, tilting his head slightly. This icy tone made Robin stunned for a moment. Moria helped her eyes, and she could see that these two children had a lot of killing intent. Then kill me. Anyway, they are all bad guys. Ha ha. Yang Qing's voice came out, calm, not caring at all. Disembark. Following the captain's order, a series of 4 black figures jumped off the wooden boat, and then stood firmly on the wooden planks of the port. Facing countless different gazes, the 4 of them stood there, because they were covered by black robes, their faces could not be seen, but from the perspective of body size, they were all shorties. Are they all children? Takis was stunned, then laughed. Look at your height, did you come from the dwarf country? Does Takis really want to laugh? After saying a word, Takis strode forward, his hideous face was particularly fierce. However, tearing up your desires will make your desire even more fiery. The 4 walked forward slowly, facing Takis. Robin's body shrouded under the robe trembled slightly, and she was nervous in the game. She seldom experienced such a ferocious and exciting scene. On the other hand, Moria, with an indifferent face, followed closely behind the 2 people in front. She seemed to feel the tension of the person beside her, and her lips curved. Keep up with them, Nico Robin. Yeah. Robin was stunned for a moment, then nodded heavily. The figure in front of her gave her a very good sense of security. Takis came to the front of the 4 in a few big steps, and the huge body was like a wall, blocking the place tightly. The 4 people's footsteps couldn't help but stop. Robin seemed to be even more nervous, and his palms were sweating a lot. Is something wrong? At the front, under the black robe, came the voice of Yang Qing, indifferent and cold. The voice, which was obviously not to be approached by strangers, immediately made Takis stunned, and then the smile on his face disappeared, and his eyes flashed with murderous light. It's not a big deal, I just want to tear you apart, you can Oh, Feng Qingyan said calmly, but Yang Qing didn't say a word. Oh, Takis' eyes trembled, he was angry, this kid's attitude really angered him, but in an instant, he clenched his fist as big as a sandbag. It was a real sandbag, and again heavy and heavy. Kill him. Suddenly, a cold voice came from under the black robe. Takis was stunned for a moment. He never thought that this newcomer who was shrouded in black robes and dared not even show his true face would actually say this sentence. Shouldn't he tremble in fear, and then beg him to forgive him? Call. A breeze blew, Takis ignored it, and he threw his fist even more angrily. At this moment, he didn't notice his back at all, and a group of people covered their mouths in shock. Nalu, in the tavern, the crowd that was very lively and noisy suddenly quieted down. Even the originally listless pirates sat up in horror at this moment and stared at it closely. Tower, behind Takis. When did that person appear? Okay, so weird, like a ghost. No, he is the real ghost. I didn't see him moving at all. You know, my eyesight is very good, I'm a sniper. Takis' fist only swung halfway down and stopped in midair. His eyes quickly dimmed, and black blood began to flow from the corners of his mouth. In just a short period of time, his vitality began to drain rapidly. Behind it, Dylan's figure flickered and disappeared, and when it reappeared, it had returned to its original position, which was eerily terrifying. He is like a ghost, different places are in different time and space, no one can catch him, and there is no way to predict where he will appear in the next second. Let's go. Yang Qing stretched out a hand and pushed the burly man who had lost his vitality in front of him to the other side. Then the group of four walked gently and came to the door of Lu Tien Bar. Trouble, let's go. Facing the silent and shocked pirates in front of them, four figures in black robes. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. He stood there quietly, not saying a word. For a time, the scene fell into absolute silence. The two men looked at each other without saying a word. Yang Qing looked around for a week, and could clearly see the obvious fear and panic in the eyes of the big men on the opposite side. It seems that Dylan's shot completely shocked them. Can I get a seat? The indifferent voice sounded. Lu, and the pirates in the sky bar trembled, and then swallowed quietly. The four black-robed pirates got up immediately and ran around. For such four pirates with mysterious origins and decisive actions, everyone should be afraid. When the four of them were seated, all the pirates in the field became quiet. Start drinking silently, and no one dares to speak aloud. The scene just now shocked their minds too much. Crack. One of the men in black robes snapped his fingers, and the bar owner immediately trotted over. What do you need? Your order. Eat, drink, whatever you want. By the way, tell us where on this island is the place for onboard supplies. Yang Qing said lightly. If you walk along this road, you can see that supplies are everywhere. The boss wiped the sweat from his forehead and said nervously. He waved his hand by the way and asked the waiter behind him to get some food immediately. For drink. Go back. Dylan's waved, and the boss obediently left. Chapter 26. Hand over all the treasures. So what do we do next? Here, there are many targets, it's a good choice. Yang Qing's words showed a smile, a bit cruel, full of killing intent. Dylan's was stunned for a moment, then thoughtfully, nodded lightly, and the eyes under the black robe flashed icy cold. He understood Yang Qing's words and understood them thoroughly. At this moment, the waiter panicked and brought the drinks and food up. It was quite delicate, and the aroma was overflowing. Little Robin immediately drooled and looked at Yang Qing quietly. Ha ha, this is much better than what Dylan's can do. Hurry up, hurry up. Yang Qing laughed, and quickly moved his hands. The four of them began to feast on each other, and they ate very fast. When the pirates around saw the four people enjoying the food, they all breathed a sigh of relief and began to relax. Although there are people who are stronger than Takis among them, they have not reached that level of difference. It is actually difficult to solve the former as simply and neatly as Dylan's. Gradually, the habit of pirates made them start to make loud noises again. Only the Death God pirates were still eating food quietly, with the sound of chewing. I tell you, I ransacked a small town a few days ago, ha ha ha, and robbed 5 million Baileys. What are you? We defeated another pirate group a few days ago and robbed their treasure, a total of 30 million. The comparison between the two immediately aroused the praise and amazement of the surrounding pirates. In this era of great pirates, too many people go to sea for treasure and fortune. As for their dreams, they don't care. The reality is so objective. What is the dream? How can you spend a lot of money Bailey, and live a happy life? They all put their heads on the belts of their trousers. Every battle is a battle of life and death. If they are not careful, they will die. Every pirate is essentially a gambler. The bet is his own life, and the bet is the future. They are rude, they are arrogant, they are cruel, and they are cold-blooded. Because otherwise, they will die. Only in this way can we survive. And the dream, as early as the pain of growth, has gone with the wind. They are just a bunch of ordinary people, and they are not qualified to talk about dreams. To live beautifully, is the biggest dream. On the side of the death god pirates, the four of them have already eaten a whole table of food. They wiped their mouths slowly, then stood up slowly. As the four of them got up together, an icy aura suddenly enveloped the place. It made the pirates who were talking loudly shudder immediately, and their expressions changed. The four, stand up. The momentum is so scary. Am I shaking? The pirates shivered, and all looked at the four who were shrouded in the black cast. Seeing the colder temperament of these four people, they secretly swallowed and became nervous. I heard you talk for a long time. It seems that you are all rich, right? With ridiculing words spit out from the mouth of the man in black robe, all the pirates' pupils shrank, and there was some kind of premonition in their hearts, but they didn't say a word. Then hand over all your treasures. The devil finally showed a ferocious smile, stretched out his fangs to the world, and showed his greedy side. He wants our treasure. It's impossible. How can you give the things you worked so hard for in vain? Absolutely impossible. This is what I only got after a lifetime of death. If you want it, walk over my corpse. The pirates reacted immediately, and the group was excited and roared loudly. Despite their fear, they desperately guarded their things. This is the property of giving everything, and no one will give it out willingly. So, kill them all. Dylan's voice was gloomy and low. Oh, Yang Qing nodded, very indifferent. A ray of yin wind spread quietly, causing the pirates present to tremble again, and there was a hint of fear in their eyes. 3 seconds later, the first strand of fresh blood bloomed like a flower and dripped onto the wine table. They were fearful, nervous, trembling, but their pupils were constricted and their hearts were beating violently. Fight! There are only 4 of them, we killed them. The ferocious side of the pirates was finally revealed. When facing the invincible fear, they finally burst out. The blue veins on their necks and arms were like horned dragons, and their faces were full of madness and hideousness. The long sword, the long knife, rushed towards the 4. There are at least 30 pirates here, and a bloody murderous aura rushes toward the face. Robin, who has never experienced this scene, immediately becomes nervous and a little scared. At the very front, Dylan's and Yang Qing, with a smirk on their faces, the aura of killing quietly released. This killing intent is even more pure and terrifying. Kill. The two sides got closer and closer, and the wine table in the middle flew out. In just a moment, the two were entangled, and began to fight. Yang Qing pulled out the long sword from his waist, then trembled slightly. A swift electric light rushed out and shuttled through the crowd. Sing! The crisp sword chant resounded through the field and began to reverberate, which was pleasant to the ear. This sword light is really like lightning, in everyone's eyes, just a flash, then quietly disappeared. It was invisible in the blink of an eye, and the speed terrified the pirates. Even at this moment, the figure of the man in black robe disappeared in their eyes. All. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. In the eyes of people, there is only that silver light that blooms quickly. He hovered in the low sky like a dragon, shuttled back and forth, bringing the strong wind in the field. Then he let out a low growl, venting his rage to the world. There were more than 30 pirates in the field, and in just 3 seconds, this sword light wandered around for a week, and then returned to the scabbard. Choke. The sound of the sword returning to its sheath sounded. Yang Qing's black robe trembled slightly, and seemed to be fluctuated by the breeze. Dylan's figure remained motionless and had not yet set off. But all the pirates who were rushing forward in the field had a red line on their necks. Then, the pirates stopped. Panic and fear appeared in their eyes. I'm dead. Stretching out, stroking, and touching their necks, the pirates were frightened, and they touched their hands full of blood. The strong smell of blood began to come out, and the strong smell of rum was completely covered up. Puff, puff. The continuous sound of falling to the ground continued to sound, and more than 30 pirates were all wiped out. Just after that sword cry, all fell to the ground and died. Okay, that's awesome. Behind him, little Robin opened his mouth in shock. He couldn't believe that her captain was so powerful. Moria's eyes flashed a little bit. She was a little surprised, but she was still calm. Chapter 27 Important Information. Your swordsmanship is faster. This is Dylan's. Different from the extremely explosive move at that moment, this swordsmanship seems to be even more incredible. It is powerful, fast, so fast that no one can avoid it. In just a few breaths, more than 30 pirates were all lying on the ground. The ground was stained red with blood, and a strong smell of blood came out. The crowd watching the excitement was immediately empty, and looked at this side with fear. The bar owner on the side changed his face even more. His whole body was shaking. Take out the reward orders on them, and then take the treasures on their ships before leaving. Yang Qing said softly. Dylan's nodded, and began to search one by one. Just a short while later, Dylan's had a stack of bounty orders on him, and the bounty was mostly written in millions. These pirates belong to all kinds of destruction, and the bounty amount obtained from the robbery is not strong. Then the four of them dressed in black robes and left here, looking mysterious and strange. When the people on the side saw the four people passing by, they all hid in fear and made way for the four of them. Immediately afterwards, the four of them calmly found a place to supply food and supplies on board. A quarter of an hour later, there was a large package behind Dylan's back. Among the four, he is the tallest and looks sturdy, so this kind of thing is naturally up to him. Yang Qing wandered around at will. This island is not big, and it will be completed in a while. Most of the lively areas are in the port location, and other places are forests, desolate and uninhabited, and almost no one will go. After the four people transported the supplies to the ship, they disembarked again. This time, their target is still those pirates. All the Death God pirates were dispatched, with Yang Qing and Dylan's as the main force, and Robin and Moria as the auxiliary. As soon as the pirate in front fell, the two people in the back quickly stepped forward to search out the bounty on their mountain, and then carefully folded it. Keep it well, these are treasures. Moria's voice came from under the black robe, and Robin nervously collected the reward orders. It was the first time she had done such an exciting thing. After doing this, it was getting late. The four returned to the boat, and then sorted out the harvest during the day. Moria began to announce with a calm expression. Gold, jewelry and other valuables, probably worth 67 million Baileys. Bailey's words. Moria adjusted her glasses. 72 million. This number immediately made Robin's eyes widen, and Dylan's was also excited. Only Yang Qing waved his hand indifferently. He was born in Tianlong and has never had any concept of money. But it is also a joy to have more than 100 million Bailey's funds. So much. Then let's celebrate. The banquet began. Meat, red wine, candlelight, and singing began to appear on the deck of the Death Pirate ship. The four of them were in high spirits and had a great time playing. Speaking of which, apart from Yang Qing and Dylan's, the other two are also children in terms of age. Moria looks mature, but in fact, she only looks like a little adult, and she is essentially a child. When the moon is on the middle, the four people are in a daze. Alcohol makes them psychedelic, sleepy, and a little overworked. They didn't notice that under their pirate ship, a faint trace in the sea began to appear, and it was approaching at a very fast speed. At this time, they should all be asleep. After a while, a head emerged from the water, took off the respirator covering the nose and mouth, and said in a low voice. The figure lurking in the sea listened quietly for a while, and then didn't hear the movement of the boat. Just now, he slowly climbed onto the pirate ship in front of him. Of course, he didn't go up the stairs. It can be seen that this figure's skills are very strong. He jumped up in the water and grabbed the wall of the boat that was nearly 10 meters away. Then the man quietly poked his head up, trying to find out what the unimaginable and unimaginable pirate group was like in the daytime. How hideous and ferocious was the figure cast by the shrouded black. But the next moment, when the man saw the situation on the deck, he was stunned, his whole body was shaking, and he almost fell from the boat into the water. How is that possible? A bunch, kids. After just a moment, the man became excited. He knew that this was big news, and this was definitely huge information that would allow him to be promoted. He quietly took out something from his waist, and it reflected a faint light against the moonlight, but it was a camera. Then the man clawed on the wall of the ship with one hand, and held the camera tremblingly at the deck of the ship with the other hand. At this moment, he was very nervous, knowing that although these people are still children, they are all murderous children. Murder at every turn. During the day, the pirates on this island can be said to be almost killed. They are simply devils. Click. With trembling hands, he pressed the shutter button, and after pressing it 7 or 8 times, the figure then fell full, descended into the sea, and quickly swam away from here. When he got to the shore, he swept around very cautiously, then trotted away. After a while, he knocked on the door of a small courtyard northwest of the island. Who? Came a low voice from the courtyard. 2346782. The figure reported a series of numbers, and the door creaked open. Prepare the phone bug, I have important information to report. The figure whispered with a serious face, and then he took off his wetsuit, revealing a standard naval uniform. Yes, Sergeant. The person in front of him saluted respectfully and walked away quickly. When the soldier came again, the figure had already changed his clothes, and the seawater on his face had been wiped clean by him. Taking the golden phone bug handed over, the figure adjusted itself. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Own breath, and then dialed. You leave first, the figure cautiously said to the standing soldier. The soldier was stunned for a moment, gave a quick salute, and then left, carefully closing the door. Blue blue blue. The phone worm's unique voice sounded, and 10 seconds later, the phone worm changed into a majestic face with a national character, and the thick voice rang through the phone worm. Hey, Junhai Branch 1494 Headquarters, what's the matter? I'm the Intelligence Department, Richard. Richard said quickly. Intelligence Department. The voice on the other side hesitated for a while, and after 10 seconds, he replied, I have been confirmed, please speak. This time the voice was obviously much softer and less deadly. I'm on Longona Island at the moment, just today. Richard quickly reported what happened today in a low voice, and then concluded, and at about 12 o'clock tonight, I boarded the board in secret. Their pirate ship. I found something that surprised me and made me think they are dangerous people in this age of pirates. Chapter 28 Shocked. What did you find? The other side asked curiously. The people shrouded in black robes turned out to be a group of children, the oldest being 18 and the youngest. Richard took a deep breath, but only 10 years old. Hiss. There was a sound of inhalation from the phone worm on the opposite side, obviously shocked to the extreme. Are you serious? Immediately afterwards, the voice on the other side was hurried and surprised. I took pictures of them and I'll send them later. Richard also knew such a thing. It was hard to believe, but it was because of this that he felt that this information was very important. Regardless of whether the 4 people shrouded in the black cast during the day are children or not, the fact that these 4 people can suppress the pirates on the entire island is enough to show that their strength is definitely around 40 to 50 million. And it is such a character, and there was no trace of rumors or traces before. This is an incredible thing. And when their ages were confirmed, the danger levels of these people increased exponentially. Okay, you can send the photos over, so we can determine their identities as soon as possible. The voice on the other side was quick, and then hung up the phone. Immediately afterwards, Richard found a tool for transmitting photos from this temporary intelligence station, passed in the data on the camera at a skillful speed, and waited for the phone bug to ring again. Intelligence Department. San Carlo was taken aback, then nodded, let's go then. Soon, San Carlo came to the Intelligence Department. This is a very secret basement with a lot of display screens, and phone bugs are piled up in every corner. The phone bugs are pasted with complicated numbers, which represent the codes that are distributed by each expatriate. You said you have information to report to me, San Carlo said solemnly. Seeing the arrival of San Carlo, the intelligence staff all hurriedly stood up and then saluted. After San Carlo waved, everyone sat around the round table in the room. Yes, first, Richard sent a piece of information just now. Before that, he told us that a pirate group with a combat capability of 40 to 50 million pirates appeared on the island of Longonabo, which he was in charge of. Quote. Longonabo Island, that pirate gathering place in Junhai. San Carlo raised his eyebrows. It's there. The captain of the intelligence department nodded, and after San Carlo signaled him to continue, he quickly said, we originally thought that this was a new pirate group organized by a strong group that just appeared. Headed to the Great Route, but, with Richard's debriefing, we found it was much more than that. The captain's face became dignified. He stood up with his hands on the round table, and said in a low and serious voice, Richard risked his life to approach this terrifying pirate group an hour ago, trying to detect their specific information. Quote. Then he discovered that the age of this terrifying pirate group shocked him. Age? San Carlo asked himself. What age are they? 20 or 30? No, the oldest of them is about 18 years old, and most of the other 3 are between 10 and 12 years old. The captain's face was already very serious. What did you say? San Carlo slapped the table in shock, unable to believe it. Between the ages of 10 and 12, shouldn't this age be to enjoy family happiness together in the company of parents? At this time, shouldn't the fragile be able to be lifted by an adult with one hand? Where did this group of people come from? At this age, there will be a strength of 40 to 50 million. How can that be? Are you sure? Sure. Richard has already sent their information, and as far as we know, this pirate group is far more than that. This time, the captain's forehead was sweating. San Carlo also became dignified. He took a deep breath. With such strength at his age, he could already be compared to those genius-class students in the sea, and he was considered a real danger. Go on. Bring Richard's photo here, the captain said quickly, and soon, a photo appeared on the round table, and San Carlo's eyes couldn't help but look. The captain pointed to the person in the photo with a particularly solemn voice. It was a squinting girl who had fallen asleep. His fingers were trembling and trembling. She, Nikkei Robin. Bounty, 79 million Baileys. San Carlo's eyes shrank instantly, and his whole body tightened. He stared at the girl who seemed harmless to humans and animals, matched the reward order in his mind at a very fast speed, and then quickly confirmed. That's right, it's Nico Robin, the Devil's Child. That, extremely dangerous element. It's far more than that. San Carlo thought it was over, but the second lieutenant shouted, making him nervous again, and he couldn't help but look at the other people in the photo again. Major General, look at this boy. The captain pointed his finger at Dylan's. This, the ghost, Dylan's. San Carlo stood up in shock. He said quickly, wasn't he caught? Wasn't he auctioned in the Chambord Islands? No, was it sold to the Tianlong people? Dylan's, the ghost with a bounty of 50 million. Quote. Yes, this is indeed Dylan's, yes, the Dylan's of the Great Waterway. As for why he appeared in Junhai, we don't know. The captain said helplessly. San Carlo seemed a little lost. There was a pirate group with a total reward of more than 100 million in Junhai. This was beyond his expectations. Unceremoniously, this death pirate group, at this moment, it was promoted to the most vicious pirate group in Junhai, and there is no such thing as. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. 1. What about the identities of these two people? Have you confirmed it? San Carlo, who would react later, pointed to Moria and Yongqing, and to his relief, the captain shook his head. San Carlo sat on the seat and rubbed his temples with his thumb. Nico Robin, the son of the devil, and Dylan's, the ghost, made him feel very troublesome. He is a lazy person. After graduating from the Marine Corps Military Academy, he has never been dispatched on a mission. He finds it troublesome, and the Marines below do everything. After all, being assigned here shows his strength, and his family is not ordinary. But this time, it seems that the soldiers below are not balanced. Are you going to do it yourself? Chapter 29 Power. What a headache. San Carlo felt helpless, and then he thought of Nico Robin again. It seemed that this girl was a bounty issued by the Marine Corps headquarters. A bright. Perhaps, you can help me get ready to contact the phone bug at headquarters. After the captain was stunned for a moment, he immediately took action. After a while, a phone bug appeared in front of San Carlo. San Carlo picks up and dials. Blue blue blue. In just 3 seconds, the phone worm was connected. The first department in Junhai, please speak. I'm Major General San Carlo. I sent a photo just now. Please read it and tell me the result. San Carlo said in a serious voice. Understood. The phone bug fell silent, and after a dozen breaths, a majestic male voice sounded over there. Hey, San Carlo. Father. San Carlo was a little stunned, but it was his father who answered the phone. That pirate group, don't decide to do it without authorization. In addition, pay attention to safety. His father said very seriously and seriously. What? But Nico Robin, not HQ. What is that little girl? His father interrupted him unceremoniously. You remember, don't do it yourself, and wait for the notice from the headquarters. And that Dylan's, Ghost Dylan's. San Carlo was stunned, and then quickly said. What Dylan's? Don't worry about those, there will be changes in the near future, protect yourself. His father said impatiently, and lowered his voice in the second half of the sentence. The phone worm was hung up, and San Carlo sat blankly in his seat a little dazed. What's going on? Listening to his father's tone, that devil's son, Ghost Dylan's, didn't seem to be taken seriously. So, among these 4 people, is there a more terrifying person? He looked at the photo and thought in shock, is it that boy, or is it that girl? Which is it? Marine Headquarters. The World Court, what do you say? San Carlo's father, Fandy Luo asked in a deep voice. Just now, when he saw the photo, he reported the information to the World Court again. Because this matter is too important, he can't help being careless. Stand by. The secretary said 2 words quietly. Fandy Luo's eyes flashed, and then fell silent. The Tianlong people actually appeared in Junhai and even formed a pirate group. He doesn't know what's in it, and he's not interested in knowing it. He only worries about that sea area, and his son must not get into any trouble. General Waring states, what did you say? Fandy Luo asked again. He said it was complicated, try to keep calm, the secretary added. Fandy Luo's face sank again, and even the Warring States said that this matter was complicated. Why do Tianlong people go out? What's the big secret in this? Thinking of the huge accident caused by another Tianlong person some time ago, Fandy Luo felt his heart twitch. In the Tianlong People's Palace, in a splendid and gorgeous manner. Monet rubbed the photo in his hand into a ball, and his eyes were already bursting with anger. He waved the leather whip in his hand fiercely, making a purple scar on the body of the feared maid under his feet, and then fiercely, after 3 years, you actually hid in Junhai, where do you think you could hide? Family, let my son be the victim, do you think you can get any better? Someone, he shouted loudly. Sir. Immediately, a strong man in black came in and bowed his head respectfully. Contact me, the Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, I want that kid to die without a burial place. Monet said loudly, his eyes flickering with murderous light. Boy, do you really think that Tianlong people are as simple as eating and waiting to die? I want you to know that this race is definitely more than that simple. Not to mention those who have power, even someone like me who has no power at all, it is easy to need you. Yes, there are 15 members of our Monet family among the sea soldiers. It is very easy to let that kid die, the man in black said with a smile. Soon, the man in black got a small golden phone bug, and then dialed, if you have an order, go to Junhai and kill that kid. If you are successful, you will arrange it later. Major General. After speaking, the man in black hung up the phone bug, squeezed it with his right hand, and the phone bug made of gold turned into a piece of powder and disappeared here. In Alpha manner, Yang Qing's mother looked worried. Don't worry. Alpha just hugged his wife calmly and comforted her softly, his eyes shining brightly. If someone wants to shoot at his son, will he sit still? The answer is, impossible. After comforting his wife for a while and letting the latter fall asleep quietly, Alpha stood up, then he walked out of the room, waved his hand, and a dark shadow flickered behind him. Sir. What do you think power is? Alpha asked inexplicably, making the man in black stunned. Then the man in black thought for a while and answered seriously. Strength refers to his own strength, such as One Piece. His strength is very strong, and he has excellent strength. Another example is the white beard in the New World. He is also very strong. This is strength, and like a commoner, there is no strength. Then do you think that these celestial dragons living in the Holy Land? This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Have power? Alpha asked, with a twinkle in his eyes. Tianlong people rarely practice, and those who practice can't stand loneliness. In the end, there is no result. They should have no strength. The man in black replied cautiously, secretly paying attention to Alpha's face. Ha ha. Alpha showed a mocking smile. Open your eyes to see clearly. I will tell you what power is. Your narrow vision can never truly see the world. I will tell you that energy is the strongest force in this world. This sentence entered the ears of the man in black, causing the latter's eyes to shrink, and he understood in an instant. In terms of his own strength, he could crush the man in front of him instantly, but he didn't even dare to look into the eyes of the former. The energy of the Tianlong people is too powerful. If it has more powerful power, what will happen? Involuntarily, the man in black thought of the man's son in front of him, and his heart trembled violently. Immediately afterwards, he saw Alpha take out a small golden phone bug and said in an indifferent tone, Moses, is it the court of the world? The imperial court of the world. The man in black suddenly opened his eyes, unable to believe it. Chapter 30 Encounter. Marine Headquarters. Sengoku sat on the seat with a serious face, and Garp beside him smashed the donut into pieces, making a crisp, click, sound. In addition, lieutenant generals such as Aokiji and Akainu are also sitting here bored. I flipped through the few photos that just came, and my face was a little weird, and I didn't speak for a long time. Just the moment he saw this photo, and then thought of the incident that happened in the Holy Land Mary Joria 2 years ago, there was a feeling that the storm was about to come in his heart. Tianlong people, they are really a worry-free group. Some said helplessly, feeling a little pain in the air. Yes. Sora made a decision. Sengoku salutes and leaves here. In addition, Nicole Robin seems to be there too. Sora pressed his temples and looked at Aokiji. It seems that you are responsible for this matter. Go and bring her back. Qingzi was stunned for a moment, and there was a look of disgust on his face, as if he was a little unwilling. What? Is there a problem? No, it's just that my stomach is a little uncomfortable recently, and my combat power is a bit lacking. Qingzi said helplessly. Go. Sora said nothing. Yes. Then let's end the game. There is no need for us to interfere in the internal game of the Tianlong people. Continue our tasks. Don't do nothing all day. The era of the great pirates is coming. There are many troubles. Kong said with a headache. The crowd took orders and then retreated. Yang Qing stayed on Longona Island for about 3 days before preparing to leave. The supplies on the ship are all ready. The bodies of the 4 are covered in black robes, and they will not be discovered by those who are interested, which is very mysterious. The target has left the island. San Carlo was very curious, but he knew that the heavier the curiosity, the sooner it died, so he didn't want to explore it, but buried the question deep in his heart and left it to ask his father later. The wooden boat quickly left the harbor and disappeared from the sight of the sentry. Facing the sea breeze, Yang Qing and Dylan's Robin sat at the bow of the boat with their eyes closed comfortably. The route was fixed, and they could sail in the direction of the wind. Captain, aren't we going to the Great Channel now? We have to wait. Yang Qing squinted his eyes and shook his head. He clearly knew that according to the previous One Piece king, there was still some danger for them in the Great Waterway at this moment. Insufficient strength is one of the biggest drawbacks. If you don't have the strength to protect yourself and enter that sea area without authorization, you will only usher in failure. I'm going to travel all over the world first, Yang Qing said with a smile. The world? Dylan's asked suspiciously. Yes, southeast, northwest, 4 sea areas, swim them all once, and then enter the Great Waterway. Don't you think it's very interesting to see this world and see this world clearly? Yang Qing said with a smile. Dylan's had black lines on his face, and he didn't find it funny at all. Can we go to O'Hara? Robin said timidly. O'Hara, is that Robin's hometown? Yang Qing said with a smile. Yes. Robin was a little sad when he mentioned his hometown. Yes. The 3 of them were chatting at the bow of the boat, while Moria was lying on the chair in the sun, flipping through the book in her hand, and gently supporting the glasses on the bridge of her nose from time to time. And about 30 nautical miles away from them, 2 warships are approaching here at an extremely fast speed. At the bow of the boat, a stalwart figure, the cloak of justice behind him swayed in the wind. He was tall and serious, looking out at the sea in the distance. The target has been seen. Muttering a sentence, starting from the Marine Corps headquarters, advancing at full speed for 3 consecutive days, and finally met the target today. Before that, 3 of the 5 people who accompanied him had been annihilated by the enemy. And he is also very clear about the identity and purpose of the other party. There is no doubt that this is a rather dangerous mission. However, he had no choice. Laobi, do you see the target? Said gently to the phone bug. Ron, see, prepare to act. The strength on the opposite side is not strong, but we must beware of the sudden appearance of the other side's forces to prevent the mission from changing. A serious voice came from the phone bug. Ron nodded and said nothing. Although the other party was successfully thrown off at the intersection of the ocean currents an hour ago, no one can be sure whether the other party will suddenly appear. Gradually, it was 10 nautical miles away from the small wooden boat flying the pirate flag. Ron could clearly recognize that the shape of the wooden boat was unique to the Chambord Islands, and it seemed that it was the right target. Wait, Ron, look northwest. Suddenly, Ryobi's voice came from the phone bug. Ron's eyes trembled, and he turned his head immediately. He saw a little reflection at the end of the sea level, shining his eyes. He narrowed his eyes, and after looking carefully, he couldn't help trembling all over. That is, Lieutenant General Aokiji. How did he come here? Don't worry about it so much, let's act quickly, before he comes, maybe we can end this mission. Ryobi said solemnly. Ron nodded, then said loudly in a serious tone. Speed up. The warship shuddered violently, picked up speed again, and made a deep mark on the sea. On the wooden boat, Yang Qing sat at the bow, his eyes narrowed suddenly. The smell of the sea breeze. No. There's a cannon fire. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The smell of smoke came over, so he turned his head immediately. In an instant, Yang Qing's eyes shrank. That's it, a warship. No, there are sailors. Dylan said loudly with a change in his face. It's the Lieutenant General of the Navy, that's the headquarters, standard warship. Moria also stood up, her eyes a little dignified. Chapter 31 _ How come the warships of the headquarters are here? Dylan's was very puzzled. Also, it seems that the target is clearly aimed at us. Prepare for battle. At this moment, Yang Qing did not pay any attention to the meaning behind this incident. His expression was stern, and his body exuded an icy killing intent. No matter what the enemy's purpose is, just crush it. At this moment, about 5 nautical miles to their left, a warship suddenly appeared, and then without any hesitation, it fired artillery. Its target is the sea soldier on the opposite side that is getting closer and closer to him. The cannon shot out of the chamber, exuding the smell of cold fire, and hot gunpowder, piercing the sky and dragging white smoke, bombarding the surrounding warships on the opposite side. Enemy attack. Prepare to attack. Inside the warship, there was a sound of shouting, and then, the sound of artillery fire on the warship also quickly rang, and the two warships bombarded together. This artillery fire formed a dense net, and the attack range was very wide, and it also covered Yangqing's pirate group, which made the people among them immediately nervous. The target of the Navy warship is us. Moria's eyes flashed with wisdom. Yangqing's eyes narrowed slightly, and then calmly said, "Dylan's, destroy the shells and protect the safety of the entire ship." Yes. Dylan's flickered and disappeared from the field, then waved his hand and attacked from the air. 10 meters away from the wooden boat, all the shells exploded and fell into the water, only the thick smell of gunpowder smoke and sulfur entered everyone's nose. In this way, the wooden boat moved forward steadily, and Yangqing and the four of them calmly watched the bombardment of the two rooms in front of them. The two ships did not stop at all during the shelling. Even the speed of the ship did not slow down, revealing strict laws and icy ruthlessness. Among them, the ship that took the initiative had already suffered several gunfire, but the owner of the ship was still calm. "It's getting close, prepare for hand-to-hand combat." The two ships approached quickly, when they collided fiercely. The people on both sides of the boat rushed out densely, with expressions of madness and blood. The gunshots continued to sound, and the smell of blood left here, making people uncomfortable. The members of the Death God pirates clearly saw that two burly generals with the cloak of justice fluttering on their backs rushed out from the Navy warship. On the other side's boat, a figure in a black suit stepped out, with a cold and indifferent expression. In just a moment, the two sides quickly contacted and began to fight. "You know, who is the target of the shot. The consequences are not what you can afford," the man in the black suit said loudly at the beginning of the battle, obviously unable to support one opponent and two. "I don't want to know, and I'm not interested in knowing," Ryobi said. The three of them were extremely fast, like electric light, and began to fly over the three large ships at high speed. The occasional attack wave caused the deck of the ship to shatter, and pieces fell to the bottom of the sea. Yangqing's eyes shone with fierce light, and he clearly felt that the goals of both parties were himself, but one of them wanted to deal with him, while the other wanted to protect himself. "Is that you, Alpha?" He wanted to understand a long time ago, why the Tianlong people obviously have no power, but they stand at the top of the world and belong to the top of the food chain. Ordinary people can cultivate, and Tianlong people undoubtedly occupy the most advantageous conditions. What makes these people rotten? Energy is also a power. Since birth, Tianlong people have mastered this innate power. Most of them were wild and unwilling to practice cultivation anymore. For them, it was a painful experience. It's already stronger. What else is needed? This is the most intuitive idea. And there is a group of people who have mastered a powerful force and occupy this advantage. Why not become stronger? To help them and to master the world more perfectly. The Tianlong people may be divided into two parts. One part is strong and powerful. They are the apex of the real world. The other part has given up the power of practice and has powerful energy. The two kinds of people formed a group together and ruled the world of pirates. So why did his father stop him from practicing when he was a child and told him it was stupid? What's the reason for this? Yangqing couldn't understand for a while. But there is no doubt that among them, there must be this unknown secret, or there is the existence of third-party forces. The fact that Tianlong people cannot cultivate may be the result of compromise negotiations. Of course, these are all Yangqing's guesses, and he doesn't know what the specific reasons are. Only as we go on in the future, we will fully understand it. His current power is still too small, and when one day he becomes strong enough, he may be able to figure out what is hidden in this world. "Captain, this Navy's target is us," Dylan said with narrowed eyes. Yangqing nodded. They had already seen the soldiers on the warship, and they started diving towards their ship. After frowning and thinking about it, Yangqing's wrist trembled, and a dark light appeared between his fingers. "It's it." Dylan's eyes lit up, and he was looking forward to how powerful an attack like this would be 3 years later. I vaguely remember that a few years ago, when that ray of light bloomed, Dylan's was excited from the bottom of his heart and his blood boiled. That is the means to instantly kill the most powerful opponent, one-shot kill without any hesitation. It was a throbbing from the depths of the soul, the depths of the marrow. However, 3 seconds after Yang Qing squeezed the black light in his hand, he closed it again. No, it's too far. My strength can only keep the flying knife within 30 meters. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Has the strongest attack power. Yang Qing gave up. He was waiting for the moment. Dylan's eyes flashed, as if he understood something and was still looking forward to it. They could clearly see the battle between the 3 people not far away. The strong man in the black suit fought 1 against 2. At this moment, it was obvious that he could no longer support it. His figure kept dripping blood on the deck. The breath is also very urgent, and he has reached the limit. Sure enough, a minute later, the 2 lieutenant generals inserted the long swords in their hands into the body of the man in the black suit, killing the latter, and then killed the other people on the opposite boat at a very fast speed. Speed up and catch up with that pirate ship. Ryobi shouted loudly. Remember, anyone on the ship, who doesn't stay, is the worst criminal. Yes. Chapter 32. Trust them. The sailors responded loudly, and the warship was catching up again, and there was a strong smell of blood. Ron turned his head and glanced at the northwest. The white light was getting more and more dazzling, representing that the green pheasant was very close to here. It doesn't matter, when he arrives, we have already solved the battle. Ryobi said softly, the target's age is very young, and the strength will not be very strong. Ron nodded. The 2 damaged warships cut through the sea and moved slowly forward. In front of them, a large number of sailors had approached the wooden ship and began to prepare for boarding, shouting and killing the sky. Everything seems to be in full swing, and this mission looks like victory is in sight. The hearts of the 2 could not help but relax. The enemy is also very powerful. Of the 5 lieutenant generals, 3 were left forever, and they were also chased to Junhai. It can be said that the 3 days from the Marine Corps headquarters to Junhai were the most intense and exciting 3 days in their lives. As a relationship family who is not easy to ascend to the position of lieutenant general, although they are not powerful, they have a strong background. However, this battle was a real loss. Be careful, at the last minute, there is no room for an accident. The 2 stared closely at the wooden boat in the distance. The sailors had already started boarding, and the battle would start in the next moment. Dylan's. Yang Qing shouted loudly when he saw the head popping out of the boat, his eyes turned cold. Received. Without any hesitation, Dylan's had a grin on his face, and the dagger in his hand suddenly flashed an icy cold light and disappeared in an instant. Ah! The soldier who just came out of his head didn't even see the situation on the ship, and was pierced by a cold light, and bright red blood suddenly spurted out. Leave none. Yang Qing's eyes were cold, bloodthirsty killing intent emanated from his body. On the boat, little Robin was a little scared, and her hands were shaking. Seeing the scene in front of her, the 2 fast-approaching warships in the distance, she thought of the ruined O'Hara. These people are all here for me. Little Robin wanted to cry, but she suddenly felt that there was no one to rely on in this sea, only that suddenly there was only one person left. Suddenly, a warm and soft hand grabbed her. Come with me, all we need to do is protect ourselves. Moria took Robin by one hand and walked towards the bedroom on the boat. In addition, what we have to do is trust them. Robin was stunned for a moment, the tears in his eyes trembled, and he nodded heavily, yeah. When Yang Qing turned around, seeing the tears in Robin's eyes, the chills spread all over his body even more. He gently pulled out the common sight around his waist, and his eyes became emotionless. Dyrants, kill them all. It's the enemy who makes my shipmates sad. The dagger in Dylan's hand tightened, and then he said loudly, yes, Captain. In an instant, Dylan's figure became erratic. His figure seemed to have penetrated into the space, and at the same time, the dagger in his right hand could emerge from 4 or 5 places at the same time. Unpredictable, let the soldiers boarding the ship sprayed with blood, killing them instantly. His shot was cold and cruel, not at all the gentle look he had when he was on the boat. At this moment, Dylan's turned into the most ruthless ghost. Yang Qing walked forward, holding the single sword in his right hand lightly. Dylan's fruit ability is very useful against these soldiers. But unfortunately, with the passage of time, more and more enemies flooded into the ship, and he was a little overwhelmed. At this moment, Yang Qing moved, his right hand trembled, and the long sword made a humming sound. Yan. The crisp sound of sword chants echoed on the wooden boat, and at this moment the soldiers couldn't help but look up. However, just at the next moment, a little cold light suddenly appeared, mercilessly plunged into their throats, and the beautiful blood flowers bloomed. In an instant, the thumping sound continued, and all the sailors who climbed up the wall died and fell. Puff puff. With a random flick of the long sword, blood beads shot out, penetrating the wooden boat, revealing the powerful power of its owner. The scene of this instant kill made the sailors who were swimming over with all their strength suddenly terrified. They couldn't help but stop, feeling a little scared in their hearts. Then, that kid. His swordsmanship is terrifying. Fast, too fast. In an instant, 20 sailors were killed. The faces of the sailors became extremely frightened, their whole bodies were shaking, and there was the boy standing at the bow of the boat, who was undoubtedly a devil fruit person, and he was not as strong as a human being. It's just 2 people, but it makes them stop. Who is this mission? On the fast-moving warship, Ryobi and Ron's pupils shrank, and they were a little shocked. No one has said that that child has such strength. Ryobi was a little dignified. This blow, perhaps because of its strength, skill, and speed, has infinitely approached those 80 million pirates. This kid is very strong. Ron also narrowed his eyes. Gradually, as time passed, the 2 warships were 100 meters away from the wooden ship. At this moment, the people on the bows of both sides narrowed their eyes and looked at each other solemnly. The rank of Lieutenant General. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes, and Dylan's tightened the dagger in his hand beside him. The Lieutenant General of the Naval Headquarters can already be regarded as a real powerhouse. The hearts of the 2 immediately tightened. Of course, they didn't know in their hearts that the other party was just a relationship family who rose through relationships. In terms of strength, they were not as powerful as a real lieutenant general. Yang Qing's wrist trembled, a dark light appeared, Dylan's eyes flashed, and he moved quietly. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Blocking Yang Qing's right hand and hiding the black light. Okay, he asked in a low voice. Yang Qing closed his eyes and silently felt the distance between the 2 sides. The distance of 100 meters was advancing rapidly, and it gradually crossed halfway and reached 50 meters. Come on, Yang Qing thought silently in his heart. An invisible aura began to rise from his body, fierce, endless, cold, extremely oppressive, and possessed a domineering aura. Dylan stood beside him and clearly felt the difference in the momentum of Yang Qing's body, slightly changing color. This momentum, no matter which time he felt it, would shock his heart. This is the sublimation of the soul, the condensation of the will, and it is a truly terrifying blow. 40 meters. Yang Qing's momentum is constantly rising, and is about to reach a peak of condensation. An invisible and fierce wind begins to blow from the wooden boat. Dylan's, who was standing beside him, squeezed the dagger involuntarily, and a cold sweat appeared on his forehead, which made him very stressed. Chapter 33 3 minutes. 30 meters. Suddenly, Yang Qing opened his eyes. At this moment, his eyes were dazzlingly bright, and in a trance, it was as if 2 dazzling lights were rising from the wooden boat. At the same time, with a pop, his left hand snapped his fingers. With a sound of boom, a circle of invisible light shields centered on him and quickly extended in all directions. In less than a second, it had already covered a radius of 30 meters. And at the moment when the mask appeared, Yang Qing's right hand suddenly stretched out, black rays of light bloomed, and the invisible and terrifying momentum suddenly surged. Above the warship, the expressions of the two lieutenant generals suddenly changed drastically. After seeing the huge mask, their hearts were stunned, and they had some kind of bad premonition. In particular, Ryobi on the right side trembled even more, the sweat on his forehead came out, and he felt a terrible breath locked on him. Who is it? The next moment, he saw the cold-faced child on the wooden boat on the opposite side, which made him inexplicably horrified. It's him. But how is this possible? Huh? Without the slightest hesitation, the flying knife in Yang Qing's hand turned into a stream of light and quickly went away. This is the blooming of the radiance of human nature, the fusion of the quality of one's body, and the agglomeration of the will and spirit. At the moment of blooming, it will shock the enemy's mind, and let its only flaws magnify infinitely. This is a sure kill knife. This is a knife beyond prediction, a knife that cannot be avoided. The moment Ryobi reacted, all the muscles in his body tightened, and then in a thousandth of a second, he ran the only trick that he had not learned much in the military school before. Iron block. That black streamer swept across the 30-meter air, as if the passing air had fallen into a vacuum. This is a powerful knife beyond imagination. He is as fast as lightning, making it hard to guard against. Almost as soon as it was released, the knife was unreasonable and slammed into Ryobi's most vulnerable neck. Afterwards, with a poof sound, in Ryobi's terrified and Ron's shocked eyes, they all saw a small hole in the neck. This knife broke through Ryobi's fragile iron defense and directly hit the mast 10 meters behind him, making a dull sound of tuck. Ah! Ryobi futilely covered the blood that was spewing from his erect neck. His eyes were full of fear and nostalgia for life, and then he knelt down softly on the boat, silently losing his vitality, and the blood was dyed red. The deck gave off a strong bloody smell. Ron shuddered, looking at the child on the opposite side who slowly retracted his arm, with inexplicable fear in his heart. This knife is too deterrent. Anyone who sees a colleague who was talking to him a moment ago as inexplicably killed the next moment will be horrified. Evil, devil fruit power. Ron's whole body tightened as he felt the mask covering a huge area. He did not expect that the child in front of him would have such a powerful strength. At this moment, both sides fell into complete silence. Staring at each other, only the sea breeze was blowing gently. In the middle, the sailors who were staying on the sea swallowed their saliva silently, not daring to make a sound. They looked at both sides in horror, not knowing what would happen in the next moment. 10 seconds later, Ron saw the child on the opposite side suddenly gasping for breath, and he couldn't help but froze for a moment, and the mask covering the air began to dissipate. Immediately afterwards, he responded. I know, how can it be so powerful? Ron figured it out, and he began to be thankful that the knife was not aimed at him just now. His eyes were fixed on the child who started to gasp for breath and became weak, and his whole body was loose. At such a young age, how could it be possible to control the strength to kill Ryobi in one move? He used the ability beyond his own strength, and now, he has collapsed. Ron figured it out. The warship moved forward silently, but after a while, the distance between the two sides was less than 10 meters. I need to rest. Yang Qing put his hand on Dylan's shoulder, and was almost speechless. That knife is indeed extremely powerful. The instant kill at the extreme distance of 30 meters, one pierced through the iron block of Ryobi, and it is also firmly nailed to the mast behind him. It can be said that it is already the strongest knife he issued. However, he is off. I'm alone, maybe not his opponent. Dylan's trembled, took Yang Qing to the deck, and then whispered, at the moment of life and death, he was very serious. Give me 3 minutes, Yang Qing said feebly. Dylan's thought about it, and then nodded seriously. Then, just after the two finished speaking, they saw a burly figure coming to the deck of the wooden boat. Nicole, Robin, Dylan's, both of you are here. Ron glanced at Yang Qing, his eyes flashed, and then his tone was cold. Yang Qing glanced at him, then closed his eyes and ignored him. He handed it over to Dylan's, and Dylan's agreed, so he didn't need to think anymore. Dillons turned around and faced the Lieutenant General head-on, clenching the dagger in his hand, expressionless and silent. Suffer to death. Ron took a big step and punched him. Dillons looked ahead with a calm face, and did not hide from the punch. His figure began to disappear, and then became nothing. Lieutenant General Ron, this punch was empty, and his face changed slightly. It's a devil fruit person again. Then suddenly, the long sword in his left hand blocked, and there was a ding sound behind it, and then, Ron's long sword moved back and forth, the sound of ding ding continued, and sparks flew. Dillons seemed to be hidden in the void, unable to see his figure, only saw a hand and a dagger stabbing out incessantly. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. This fast-paced battle lasted for 30 seconds before it ended. Lieutenant General Ron looked relaxed. On the other hand, when Dillons appeared on the deck, beads of sweat had already appeared on his forehead. A devil fruit-capable user of the Space Department. Ron showed a smile on his face. He had already tested the opponent's combat effectiveness. It was indeed strange, but he was not as strong as himself, and he was confident that he could win. Then, in order to quickly end the mission, complete the goal, I'm welcome. With a flick of his long sword, Ron quickened his pace and attacked suddenly. His speed suddenly increased, and Dillons, who was facing him, changed his face and charged with his dagger. The long sword slid across Dillons's waist, but it was empty. Ron's expression remained unchanged, and his right fist was blasted towards the latter's head again, and a faint black aura shrouded it, making Dillons' eyes widen. Congeal, hide the head in the void. But the next moment, something shocking happened to him. Bang! This punch seemed to have penetrated the ability of the devil fruit to be activated, and hit him directly on the head. The huge force even knocked his body out, hitting the deck and breaking the wooden deck. Dillons' face changed. The other party was able to hit him. Chapter 34 One hit, just one hit. When Dillons stood up, bright red blood was running down his head. The black aura wrapped around this punch made Dillons pierce out of the devil fruit state and caused him more damage. The severe pain made his head hurt a little, and he felt a little blurry in his vision. The enemy is as powerful as imagined. Dillons stood up slowly, his body swayed, and out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Yongqing's eyebrows trembling slightly. Then, the next time when his figure swayed again, his figure had disappeared. Hidden ghost. The three words with the breath of death came out from the void. The next moment, the light flashed, and Ron's expression changed. At the same time, a dagger flashing with cold light appeared in front of him, stabbing him fiercely. This is a wall-like attack, and countless daggers form the strongest wall, and there is nowhere to hide. With a twinkle in his eyes, the long sword in Ron's left hand trembled and passed it to his right hand. Then the dark breath began to cover the long sword. Then, his right hand turned into a storm, and in the flash of electric light, he met the dagger in front of him. Wall. The sound of ding-dong continued, and this attack lasted for 15 seconds before it ended. Dillons quietly appeared 3 meters to the left of Ron, and then disappeared. Damn! Ron scolded fiercely when he couldn't detect Dillons's figure. Immediately afterwards, the pale black breath on his long sword shrouded, and then slammed forward. A dark light appeared from the long sword and slashed forward. The target of this sword is very clear, that is Yongqing, who is sitting on the deck. When Dillons's voice appeared, he held a dagger in both hands, and after blocking the sword beam, he couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood, and he took 5 steps back, his face turning pale. Ron saw the enemy appear, and at the same time his knees were bent. He was already in front of Dillons a second later. A sword slashed horizontally, and Dillons raised the dagger to block. The huge force made his wrist tremble, and there was severe pain. He was about to use his devil fruit ability again, but was interrupted again by Ron's punch and hit him in the stomach so hard that he spurted out another mouthful of blood. The battle was going on quickly and silently, and Yongqing's figure's eyes were tightly closed and trembling. Shaking, he seemed to be able to feel everything in the outside world, and the whole was already in an unstable state. I said if you can hold on, you can hold on. Dylan's clearly noticed Yang Qing's state, and with a loud roar, he used all his strength to force Ron back. Then, his eyes flashed coldly, and bright red blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. His eyes were always fixed on Ron, and Dylan's had blocked everything else in his sight, and he entered a state of extreme concentration. The dagger in his hand feels tight. Although I don't know what kind of strange power the enemy has, which can break the power of his devil fruit, and his strength is much stronger than him, the two are not at the same level, but he said a word. I won't lose again. Even if you die. In the next second, Dylan's completely gave up using the devil fruit ability to hide his body attack. He exposed himself to the sun, and the ghost began to walk in the sun. Above the dagger, a faint silver light is attached to it, which is the power of space. He used the devil fruit ability on his dagger, enhancing his penetration and sharpness, making it more powerful. In an instant, the two figures staring at each other were entangled with each other again. The long sword was swung, with a faint black aura, and the silver light was rendered above the dagger. The two clashed together, making a loud noise. Ron's strength was so great that every time he swung his sword and slammed into Dylan's dagger, the deck under his feet would shatter, and blood would ooze from the corners of his mouth. He is a devil fruit-capable person, and his physical training is still not enough, and he can't bear such a powerful meat as Ron. Body Cultivator Attack. The collision between the two, like lightning, was incredibly fast, but in just a moment, the aftermath of the attack made the entire wooden boat shattered. Ron's power was too great for Dylan's to bear at all. Boom. After another fight, Dylan's retreated 5 steps to the rear and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Then he shook his body, swung the dagger again, and attacked the enemy. Can't be defeated. I can't be defeated. I would rather die than be defeated. He was actually injured. The next moment, Ron broke out with all his strength, and after knocking Dylan's back with a sword, he punched the ladder in the stomach again, causing the clothes on the ladder's back to pop, and smashed. Blood spit out. Dylan's body went weak and fell to the ground. His injuries were too severe, and his whole body had reached the limit. All the time, Dylan's was in great pain. Lying on the broken deck, Dylan swept away Yang Qing from the corner of his eyes, and his heart trembled when he saw the corners of the latter's eyes trembling violently. 3 minutes, it hasn't arrived yet. The next moment, Dylan shivered and got up again. This time, his whole body was limp and seemed to have no strength at all, but he still had to fight. Do you really want to die? Ron's eyes flashed, and his heart trembled slightly as he looked at the enemy who posed no threat to him at all. Where did this person come from such a terrifying desire to fight? Dylan's walked towards him step by step, and with each step he spat out a mouthful of blood. Within a dozen seconds, his blood spat out, and the thick smell of blood spread throughout the wooden boat. I will not lose. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. His expression is crazy and persistent, and he would rather die than lose again. Finally, within 3 steps of approaching Ron, his entire body suddenly tensed, and then the strength of his entire body exploded rapidly. The dagger turned into a dazzling silver light, and he seemed to have regained his full mental state at this moment, and fiercely and violently launched the most powerful blow in his life towards the man in front of him. Ron's face became extremely terrifying, a bit hideous. I'm going to kill you. Chapter 35 Why Can't? The next moment, he pulled out the dagger from Shang's mouth, raised his long sword high, and swung it down towards Dylan's. The young man in front of him lost all his strength the moment he swung the dagger. This dagger has released all his power. The long sword cut through the air and went straight to Dylan's neck. At this moment, Dylan's is facing the threat of life and death. Ron roared, angry flames filled his eyes, and the pain in his mouth drove him completely crazy. With this sword, he did not restrain his strength at all, and used all his strength. The target was very clear, it was the opponent's neck. He was going to cut off the opponent's head to pay homage to the red blood he shed. Poof! This sword even split the air, and there was a slight explosion of air, and then it came to the top of Dylan's neck fiercely. The latter is at the weakest period at the moment, and has no strength to escape at all. Are you going to die? What a pity. Dylan's closed his eyes and accepted this desperate result. But in the next second, a sharp aura burst into the sky, and a cold voice sounded. Dead space. With the crisp, ding, sound, Dylan's felt a touch of coldness on his neck, and then he suddenly opened his eyes. A short figure, trembling, stood firmly in front of him. The figure held a sword in his right hand, and the hilt was placed above his neck, firmly blocking the lieutenant general's long sword from the outside. It's you, Dylan said weakly. Why give up hope? Yang Qing's shoulders trembling, and he was gasping for breath, but he resolutely blocked the long sword and prevented it from getting close to Dylan's. I thought it was going to die. Dylan's laughed, and then he added, 3 minutes, it's not yet. It's only been 2 minutes. Ron saw the short figure that suddenly appeared. His pupils shrank immediately, then quickly backed away. Looking at the opposite side cautiously, he clearly remembered the scene of his colleague Ryobi's death, just like now, a circle of light shrouded. In just that moment, he completely lost his life. Then Dylan's regained some strength and stood beside Yang Qing. My whole body is weak, and I will pant when I speak. Yang Qing said calmly, with a cold light in his eyes. It's not time yet, you shouldn't shoot. Dylan's took a deep breath to ease the dizziness in his head and the fluctuations in his heart. If I don't take action, you will die. Yang Qing said indifferently, swept the long sword, and finally pointed at Ron opposite, and then he said indifferently and coldly, and I can't see you in front of me. Die. In Dylan's eyes, he was moved. Standing by Yang Qing's side, he could clearly perceive the state of his body. That is to say, even if he really persisted for 3 minutes, the latter would only be able to restore his normal mobility, and would not be able to fight at all. In other words, this battle, from the beginning, they may face defeat. But the latter, after seeing that he was seriously injured and facing the danger of life and death, did not hesitate at all, so he stopped resting, and dragged his body not much different to his own to participate in the battle. Can you still fight? Yang Qing asked. You can, why can't I? With the last bit of strength on his body, Dylan's regained his fighting spirit, and his eyes became divine again. Okay, Yang Qing nodded, then strode forward and shouted, then kill him. The two of us together. Dylan's advanced at the same time, and with a tremor in his hand, the dagger on the ground returned to his hand again, turning into a silver light. The pace of the two went from slow to fast, and when they finally reached Ron, they shouted and shot at the same time. The long sword suddenly accelerated, the dagger entered the space, and Dylan's disappeared with his right wrist facing down. Ron's face changed greatly, and the long sword immediately had a light black aura. Broken sword style. Yang Qing's wrist trembled, and the long sword drew a strange trace, dodging the trajectory of Ron's long sword. Under his death domain, the enemy's flaws were clearly seen. With Dugu 9 swords, he could complete control of the enemy into your own hands. At this moment, although he is powerless, his skills are superb, reaching the pinnacle of the realm. This sword climbed up Ron's long sword like a snake, and finally came to his wrist, cutting his wrist with bloodthirsty and cruelty, making him cry out in pain and let go of the long sword in his right hand. At the same moment, Dylan's dagger also came to Ron's stomach, but was blocked by the fist on his left hand and smashed away. Damn it! Ron's face was very ugly. He never thought that he would be so embarrassed. The combination of the two made him hard to guard against, especially the kid's swordsmanship, which simply shocked him. This swordsmanship seemed to go straight to his flaws, making him unable to defend at all. And what is the purpose of the mask on the top of the head? What kind of effect made him even more afraid? Thinking of the scene of Leobi's death, his heart trembled. His domineering is the most superficial. He has no control over the 6 forms. Am I going to die here today? Ron couldn't help but tremble in his heart, a little scared. He regretted it very much at the moment, why he came here. After the two people on the opposite side made an attack, they became even weaker, and it seemed that they would fall down even if they took a step. Ron saw this scene, his eyes flashed, and without hesitation, he punched out. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Bang! The two blocked the punch together, but were directly lifted off by Ron's powerful force, and slammed into the wall of the ship. You two must die. Ron, who thought he was dead a moment ago, did not expect such a shocking reversal, and his eyes flashed with excitement. The enemy is exhausted. Although he is bleeding everywhere and his right hand is abolished, he is still in good condition, and it is more than enough to kill them. Go to hell. Ron shook his body and punched Yang-Qing's temple brazenly. This child is the greatest threat to him, and he must be killed first. Dylan's expression changed, and he used all his strength to use the devil fruit ability. The next moment, he appeared directly in front of Ron. He delusionally tried to block Ron's punch with his own body, but Ron subconsciously ignored him, avoided his body, and let Dylan's body hang on his fist. Go to hell. With Dylan's, Ron roared and punched Yang-Qing. Chapter 36 Pirates. Yang-Qing, who was leaning against the wall of the ship, watched this fist swipe. His right hand trembled, and a pitch-black knife appeared, shimmering with a dark and icy light. Staring closely at the condescending Ron, Yang-Qing's eyes were extremely calm. The Death God's space is still open, and he seems to understand everything on the whole ship. He entered into a kind of divine vision, and looked at everything in this world rationally and clearly. Half leaning against the wall of the ship, Yang-Qing looked at everything in front of him calmly. He could see everything within the scope of the light mask, could feel the overwhelmed rubbing noise of the cells on his body all the time, and could even hear Dylan's heart beating. At this moment, he seemed to hear the breath of everything. Suddenly, everything slowed down in his eyes. He saw the panic-stricken look on Dylan's face, and Ron's hideous look. At this moment, he suddenly felt that the power hidden in his body was drawn out and was about to explode. The right hand is weak, and he has already left, and he has no strength. But at this moment, it was shaking. Shaking, he caught the jet black light between his index and middle fingers. All of a sudden, Ron's face changed drastically, the fist he threw abruptly stopped, and his forward posture froze. He felt a terrifying momentum that locked him in an instant, as if the next moment to greet him was the end of his life. Then, he was horrified to see that the child who was half leaning against the wall of the ship, who was already weak, shook his right hand slightly. Huh! The streamer flashed and the light of humanity bloomed, forming an invincible force that no one could stop. In this way, he rushed towards Ron, and then a bright brilliance bloomed in Ron's eyes, and then with a poof, he firmly plunged into the latter's forehead. Ron's pupils contracted violently, and then fell to the ground softly, his eyes lost their luster. Before dying, he didn't seem to believe that an enemy who had clearly lost his strength still possessed this terrifying second-person skill. Hoo-hoo! Yang-Qing, who issued this knife, instantly felt that the time and space around him had returned to normal. The sweat from his whole body kept coming out, and the whole person became groggy, and there was no trace of strength in his body. Dylan's got up from the ground, glanced at Ron who had lost his breath, and then carried Yang-Qing on his shoulder with the pain all over his body. Can you still move? Dylan's asked out of breath, and every time he exhaled, he felt the blood flow out at an accelerated rate. Yang-Qing didn't say a word, but gave the most accurate answer. Let you be brave, Dylan scolded, and he was greeted by the latter's blank eyes, as if to say, it wasn't Lao Su's shot, you were already dead. Moria, Nico, Robin, get out of here for me. Dylan's carried Yang-Qing forward for 5 steps, he couldn't walk anymore, he mustered all his strength and shouted. Turning his head, he lay on the ground, breathing heavily. He was exhausted, and the battle was over, leaving him with no more energy. Moria took Robin and walked out of the bedroom. Looking at the state of the two, the light reflected in the pupils under the glasses, Robin rushed over anxiously, and his tears were about to fall. It's okay, woohoo, it's all my fault, it's all Robin's fault, it's all my fault, I hurt you all. Robin cried, touching the bodies of Dylan's and Yang Qing, and investigating their wounds seemed very self-blame. It has nothing to do with you. Dylan said weakly. Robin, get out of the way, I'm a doctor. Moria was very calm. She walked over slowly, then squatted down, looked at the two of them seriously, and her face became more relaxed. Lucifer just collapsed. Prepare some food and physiological saline for him. In addition, squeeze the purchased grapes into juice and feed him to drink. Moria calmly commanded, then glanced at Dylan's. Finally, Dylan's injury, you bring the little suitcase on my desk. Yes, yes, yes. Robin responded hurriedly, then quickly ran into the bedroom. After that, Moria casually glanced at Yang Qing and didn't care anymore. The focus was on Dylan's. She calmly tapped her fingers around the wound on the latter's body, and then waited. Robin out. When Robin came out with the small suitcase, Moria opened the suitcase stably, and then treated Dylan's wound. Her movements seemed to be slow and fast. In just 3 minutes, Dylan's had been tied into a mummy and fed a can of pitch-black liquid to the latter. What is this? Dylan's asked in disgust after drinking it. The smell was worse than shit. Neptune's urine, Moria said lightly. Dylan's opened his eyes wide, and then made a retching sound, which made Robin, who was crying, laugh out loud. Dylan's, you're so stupid, how could Sister Moria give you the urine of a sea king? Robin reminded kindly. Dylan's breathed a sigh of relief, looking at this delicate and goddess-like woman in front of him, fearing from the bottom of his heart. He always felt that this woman was a little gloomy. This must be a psychological shadow. At this time, Yang Qing also let out a heavy sigh and calmed down. Moria's bottles of medicinal liquid were very effective, and he felt that his mental and physical strength recovered very quickly. This time, it's really dangerous. With a sigh, Yang Qing laughed. However, we still survived tenaciously. Ha ha ha. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I'm the one who's implicated you. I'll get off the boat on the next island. Robin said in a low voice at this time, biting his lip tightly. When the other 3 present heard this sentence, they all froze and followed suit. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Then looked at her. The smile on Yang Qing's face disappeared and became a little gloomy. He dragged his tired body step by step to Robin, and then put a hand on the latter's head. Do you know what you are talking about? Nicole Robin Bing. I'm sorry, I can't be with you, you're all good people, and I can't get you down. Robin yelled, tears streaming from his eyes. The audience was silent. Dylan struggled to stand up. The bright red blood stained the red gauze, showing his inner restlessness. He approached Robin step by step, and even Moria stood with a gloomy face. In front of Robin. Dyrance, Mariah, tell Nico Robin, who are we? Yang Qing shouted loudly. We are pirates. Dylan's and Mariah shouted loudly. The sound was loud, and it rang out from the sea far, and resounded in Robin's ears, causing the latter to be stunned, and the tears on his face could not help but stop. Chapter 37 Green Pheasant. I'm Lucifer. Holy. Now, as the captain of the Death Pirates, I'll tell you one thing, Nico Robin, please pay attention to me, listen carefully, and engrave these words in your heart. Robin looked at the former with tears on his face. Pirates, I didn't get involved, I didn't leave, since you got on this boat, we are partners, brothers and sisters side by side. No matter how painful and miserable you were in the past, from the moment you stepped on this pirate ship named Death God. Then you are my Lucifer's sister, brother. From now on, your pain is our pain, and your tragedy is our tragedy. No matter who you are facing, who it is, then it will become our enemy. Yang Qing's words were firm and powerful. He has not recovered yet. Every word he said made him pale and weaker, but he kept his loud voice and sounded extremely stable. However, you have no idea who the enemy I am facing is and how powerful it is. Robin roared loudly, tears welling up in his eyes. When you know, you will still leave. Yang Qing's expression became even colder. His chest heaved violently, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Yes, you don't know how powerful the enemy this sinful woman is facing. Suddenly, a voice came from the boat, and everyone was stunned and turned back suddenly. Immediately afterwards, they saw a burly figure standing lazily on the deck, as if falling asleep all the time. He stood there without exuding a trace of imposing manner, but it brought a heavy pressure to everyone present, and this pressure was countless times stronger than the two lieutenant generals before. In just an instant, cold sweat broke out on the heads of the four of them. Yes, it's you. Robin's face showed a look of horror, as if recalling something terrifying, and he kept going backwards. You, why are you here? Nicole. Robin, I gave you a chance, why don't you hide it? Isn't it good to live like a mouse? Said the burly figure lazily, walking forward slowly. As she said just now, you don't know who the enemy you will face is. I can only say, this little girl has killed a whole boat of you. Lieutenant General of the Navy Headquarters, Aokiji. Naturally a person with the ability to freeze fruit. Moria's face showed a solemn expression for the first time. I can't believe that a character like you would actually board our ship. Yang Qing's face became extremely indifferent, blocking Moria and Robin behind him. Dylan stood tightly beside him, and the two faced Qingzi. A huge pressure came like a mountain. The two of them froze in an instant. I don't want to, but who knows, someone grabbed my braids. Qingzi said helplessly, I can only say, Nicole. Robin, you are so dishonest and disappointing. I hope you can stop your steps. Yang Qing's eyes were sharp, and a dark light appeared in his right hand. With the sound of pop in his left hand, a circle of light enveloped the entire ship. The extremely sharp aura suddenly rose, causing Aokiji's footsteps to stop, and surprise appeared in his eyes. It's very good, I feel a hint of danger on your body. Qingzi said unexpectedly, but he still walked forward. The increasing pressure enveloped the whole ship. Perhaps, you can compare to that 13-year-old kid. At this moment, Dylan squinted his eyes suddenly, and the figure disappeared. The next moment, a dagger appeared on the neck of the green pheasant, and it slashed neatly, cutting the latter's head in half. Oh, ability person. Very good ability. Aokiji's head turned into a piece of ice, and then returned to its original state. At the same time, his right hand tightly grasped Dylan's right wrist, and he threw it hard. The player turned into a stream of light, slammed into the bedroom heavily, and shattered the wooden room. A lot of sweat came out from Yang Qing's forehead. The fruits of the natural system are too perverted and do not have domineering. Not a grade. This time, he faced unimaginable pressure. Obey, let's capture it. Aokiji continued to walk forward with a casual look on his face. As Nicole. Robin said, you have no idea what kind of enemy you are facing. It's much scarier than me. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, and when the fruit ability was activated, he suddenly heard Dylan's voice. Captain, hold him for a second, and I'll take you away. Dylan still has a way to escape this dangerous situation. Compared with the previous two lieutenant generals, the current Aokiji is undoubtedly extremely dangerous. He is the death god pirates, an existence that cannot be defeated at present. The only way to survive is to escape. Enemies. Who is Robin's enemy? Yang Qing asked while squeezing the flying knife. Who is the enemy? It's this world, the whole world. Qingzi's eyes narrowed, and his tone was very heavy. Oh, so, what about overturning it? The imperial court of the world, I now declare that I am your enemy. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes, and then a smile appeared on his face. If you have something, come and kill me. Huh. As soon as the voice fell, a stream of light appeared, and the black sword light turned into the only light in the world, heading towards the green pheasant. At this moment, even Qingzi's heart trembled, and then activated the fruit ability, and the elements turned into ice cubes. At this moment, Yang Qing suddenly roared, Dylan's. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Buzz. Almost at the same time, a circle of invisible ripples appeared, affecting the entire wooden boat. In an instant, the space of the size of the wooden boat suddenly distorted and disappeared here. Aokiji was stunned for a moment, looked at the empty sea around him, and fell towards the bottom. Gone. Did you escape? Standing firmly on the sea, freezing the surrounding sea within 20 meters, Qingzi stood there and thought, and after a long time he sighed with emotion. Do you want to be an enemy of the whole world? For the sake of your own crew, the Tianlong people have made a great guy, and that person seems to be the exact opposite extreme. Forget it, I'll go back and report to the marshal. Above the sea, a person riding a bicycle appeared, swaying towards the Marine Corps headquarters. Sanctuary Merigiolia. Crack. A series of sounds of falling things came from the palace. Monet's face was full of anger, and he kept roaring, "Rice bucket, waste, really waste, what is the use of you? Even a stinky boy can't be cleaned up, and the entire army is wiped out. Alpha, I'm not finished with you, and I'm not finished with you." Chapter 38. Is he not crazy? Monet's anger made the whole yard restless. His son's death could see that it had hit him very hard, and his hatred for that kid would drive him crazy. After a full hour, Alpha just calmed down. He was a little tired, and he waved his hand while lying on the rocking chair in the yard. "Sir." The man in black bowed in fear. "Continue to look for his traces." Monet breathed heavily, his eyes flashing with ferocity. "Once you find it, don't worry, kill me and bring his body to see me." "Yes." The man in black tightened his body, and out of the corner of his eyes, he saw the bloodshot and murderous intent in Alpha's eyes, and replied loudly with a biting coldness. Monet waved his hand, and the man in black quickly stepped back. On the other hand, Alpha is also nervously arranging everything. "Find that kid, make sure to keep him safe," Alpha said solemnly to the phone bug, with nervousness and worry on his face. "I really didn't expect that the Marine Corps would send Aokiji, his pirate group. How come there is more trouble with Nico Robin? It's really worrying. We'll try to find it, but..." At this moment, Alpha even felt that the strength in his hands was not enough. Alpha sighed and continued to tell the man in black in front of him some details, so that the latter would find his son as soon as possible. Only by mastering his whereabouts, Alpha will be relieved. Afterwards, Alpha turned to look inside the courtyard, adjusted his expression, replaced it with a polite smile, and walked in. "How is it? Is Lucifer safe?" Facing the woman, Alpha smiled naturally. "It's safe, he has escaped. Don't worry, with me, Lucifer will be safe." "That's good." The woman breathed a sigh of relief. Alpha also smiled and accompanied the woman into the room. In the place where the woman could not see, Alpha's face became a little heavy and worried. Marine Corps headquarters, Aokiji stood in the conference room. "Then, please report the results of this mission. Why didn't you bring anyone back?" Kong looked at Qingzi with a blank expression, and gently threw the document in his hand on the table. "Only, these 5 the body of a lieutenant general who was kicked out of the Navy." There was a troubled look on Qingzi's face. He touched his head, and after thinking for a while, he said, "Well, what should I say? Where do I start?" Sora was expressionless, staring at the latter, causing Qingzi to touch his head for a moment, appearing a little helpless. "Okay, I was careless. The devil fruit power was released by that kid, and he was teleported away." Qingzi spread his hands. "I am willing to accept the punishment for my dereliction of duty." "Go ahead, this is not what I want to know," Sora said lightly. Qingzi touched his head, and then said buzzingly, "The name of the pirate group, the Death God Pirates, consists of 4 children. The oldest is about 18 years old, Dylan's, the Ghost Dylan's, suspected to be the controller of the space system fruit ability. There is another woman, whose name is unknown, about 13 years old, how to say it? It's very smart and knows a lot. Nicole Robin, son of the devil. I don't need to say more about this. Finally, their captain, Lucifer, holy. The swordsmanship is superb. He has a move that can instantly increase his attack power by about 5 to 10 times. It's terrifying, and he is a devil fruit person. As for the ability, it is suspected to be domain-specific, but the specific ability is unknown. 4 people, 2 unknown." Kong raised his eyebrows, Lieutenant General Qingzi, this is the result of your battle, so I have to say, I am surprised. Aokiji shrugged helplessly and did not answer. The meeting room was quiet. Kizaru, Akainu, Carp, and Sengoku all sat quietly in their seats. Some were sleeping, some looked at the palms of their hands, and looked very bored. After about 5 seconds, Aokiji spoke again. By the way, that Lucifer once said a word, I don't know if it should be said or not. Qingzi was very tangled. Since you said it, then say it. Kong said lightly. He said, he is going to be the enemy of the world. Well, that's what he meant. Qingzi shrugged, he couldn't say the original words. Anyway, the meaning was probably about the same. An enemy of the world. He's not crazy, right? He's a heavenly dragon. Kong smiled, not quite believing it. Who knows, it's for Nico Robin anyway. Aokiji smiled indifferently. Oh, for his crew. Sora's expression became serious, and the powerhouses sitting in the conference room also became serious. For people in their status, and realm, their strength is certainly a factor they pay attention to, but in fact, what they pay more attention to is a person's spirit. If a person is very strong, but he is selfish, shameless, and does a lot of evil, the sea soldiers will take him seriously, but they will not define him as a big man who has an influence on the times. A real big man, a hero, he has his own terrible thoughts and can take himself as the center and influence the people around him. This kind of person has a unique personal charm. People call him a person with the qualifications of a king. He has his own daring, and unique personal thoughts. He uses his own thoughts to influence the people around him and has the power to change an era. There are not many people who dare to pay for themselves and the entire pirate ship for a world-class criminal. Sora said seriously, this kid is not ordinary. In the company of criminals, in the name of justice. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Must deal with him, Akainu said with a cold expression. Crack. Biting the donut out of his mouth, Carp was expressionless and didn't say anything. What needs to be considered is his identity. Warring States said softly. Chapter 39_. Sora nodded, and then said, so, have their bounty orders come out? Abby, who has a bounty of 35 million, and 97 thieves from Shanghai City on Longo Napo Island, most of the bounty is at 5 million. Left and right, also, kill 2 lieutenant generals and escape from our elite general, Aokiji. Have you thought about the amount of their bounty? The Warring States squinted, and then after a while of contemplation, he slowly said, Nicole Robin, the bounty remains the same, 79 million, while the Ghost Dillons, on the Great Waterway, originally offered a bounty of 5,000. The Pirates of Wan, I am afraid that I have also contributed a lot of strength in this battle with the Lieutenant General of the headquarters. Quote. Although they are trash, they are also Lieutenant Generals anyway. Being able to win has indeed proved their greatness, so let's set it at 75 million. And Lucifer. Warring States' eyes narrowed. This is a dangerous person. Offer a reward of 100 million. Sora nodded, then turned towards Qingzi. Qingzi, do you have any opinion on this amount? Qingzi was stunned for a moment, then shook his head, thinking back to the Death God pirates in his mind, facing their performance, and finally said, no problem, they are worth the price. Captain Lucifer, 100 million, Dillons, 75 million, Nico Robin, 79 million, that is to say, the 3 people in this pirate group add up to 200 million, hehe. It's the first reward. Sora shook his head with a smile, and then said coldly, they are worth the price, but they can't be rewarded like this. The court of the world has begun to turn around and put pressure on me. The identity of Tianlong is not so useless. Empty slapped the table, the amount of Dillons remains the same, Lucifer, the reward is 5,000. Won. This dangerous person has to tolerate living in a low profile under our eyes. Really, it's unpleasant. Qingzi's eyes flashed, and he nodded silently. Start the execution and issue a bounty. The meeting dispersed, and new bounties began to fly around the world, setting off a huge storm. Chambord Archipelago. Alpha looked at the reward order on the table in front of him with discoloration. On the reward order, a boy of about 10 years old with a cold face, holding a sword in his right hand and snapping his fingers in his left hand, his eyes were full of confidence and contempt. It was his son, Lucifer. And at the bottom of this avatar, there is a 5-character, followed by a long series of zeros, which is shocking. Beside him, there is another bloodthirsty youth named Dylan's, holding a dagger, his face covered with blood, and the reward is 75 million. There is also a girl about the same age as Lucifer, and the reward is 79 million. Specially note that it is extremely dangerous. After seeing it, please notify the Marines immediately. 50 million. It turned out to be 50 million. Alpha swayed and became unsteady. What did he do? Or has his strength reached such a terrifying realm? Pressure from the World Court. Next, there is actually a reward of 50 million. Alpha knew exactly what that meant. Under pressure, there is still such a terrifying amount. There is no doubt that his son, in the hearts of the sea soldiers, has become an extremely dangerous and vicious person, and he will do everything he can to eradicate the latter. At the same time, the seagulls spread out from all over the world with new bounty orders, and it was known by countless people that a new group of pirates appeared. Junhai, Longona Island. Look, yes, it's that pirate group. King, bounty, 75 million. Captain, 50 million. And this little girl, it turned out to be 79 million. Loud sounds came from all over the island, shocking people incoherently. The bar owner was shaking the bounty in his hands, not knowing what to say. Big pirate, this is the real big pirate. Chagoo Town. The villagers looked up at the bounty orders that fell from the sky. They were a little helpless. Every once in a while, the carrier pigeons of the sea soldiers would always distribute some bounty orders. Of course, that's just the case, it's good, after all, it's safe to do so. But damn, these seagulls will collect money. Holding the reward order in his fingers, the villagers were about to continue rushing home, but suddenly he saw a familiar figure in the corner of his eye, and he couldn't help but be stunned and stopped. This kid, it seems to be Dylan's. The villagers approached in disbelief, and when those who got close, really saw the face on the reward order, damn, really it's Dylan's, this kid is a pirate and has been rewarded. The villagers let out a loud cry, and their whole bodies trembled with excitement. Shaking up, he immediately turned out the following reward order. Lucifer, 50 million. And this little girl, Nico Robin, 79 million. He was stunned for a while, and his whole body was shaking with excitement. After about 10 seconds, he suddenly raised his thighs and ran frantically towards the village. In an instant, the quiet Chagoo town boiled over, and the villagers looked at the 3 reward orders and continued to evaluate with laughter. Ha ha ha, look at Dylan's, this stinky boy is a lot colder, he looks handsome. Lucifer has become more handsome, and I am waiting for him to come back and marry my daughter. Dad, don't talk nonsense. Who is this little girl? Why is the bounty higher than the 2 of them? It doesn't look great. With a smile on his face, Ritas watched this scene quietly, thinking of the man wearing glasses who always exuded wisdom. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. A smart, quiet little girl. I don't know about her. How are you doing? She remembered that night, the girl who had always been quiet suddenly pushed open his door, and then said to her lightly, I'm leaving here. Get out of here. Ritas looked puzzled. Why? I've finished reading the book. The girl just said calmly. What dreams? Ritas didn't ask, but everyone has the right to pursue their own dreams, right? Ritas let go and let the girl go. So, how are you doing now? Ritas took a deep breath of the cigarette and murmured at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 40_. In the middle of the Great Waterway and the 4 seas, there is a huge sea area. The sea here is calm and there is no waves. Under this calm sea, you can see huge shadows constantly swimming, with shocking, scalp-tingling breath. Clearly, this is a terrifying creature. Densely packed, there are countless such creatures lurking in this sea area. They are huge, several times or even hundreds of times larger than ships. They are infinitely powerful, cruel and bloodthirsty, and they can swallow countless humans in one bite. This sea area is hailed as a forbidden area by countless pirates, and this is the famous, windless zone. If the ship gets stuck here because of an accident, there is only a dead end to meet them. Whether it is the lack of wind, or the huge sea kings, it is the factor that destroys them. The sea breeze is calm, and it is warm here, and several huge sea kings are lying on the sea lazily basking in the sun. But at a certain moment, the sky above their heads suddenly fluctuated slightly, and then quickly twisted. In just 2 seconds, a tattered wooden boat suddenly appeared from above their heads, and then fell. Boom! The wooden boat fell and fell beside the sea kings, splashing a large amount of water, which also made their closed eyes suddenly open. The huge dark pupils shone with an icy luster under the sunlight, making people tremble. Ah, Dylan's, your uncles. Above the wooden boat that fell into the water, there was a long, trembling shout. You actually teleported us to Wufang. Yang Qing's face became extremely ugly. From Dylan's ability to instantly transfer, leaving Qingzi's sight, and appearing here, it took even a second. No, he thought it was safe this time, but the next moment, when he saw the behemoths below, he knew that this time the trouble was even bigger. This teleportation, is random. Dylan's was lying on the deck like a dead dog, unable to move. So last time, I drove a wooden boat to Shigu Island in Junhai from the vicinity of the Chambord Islands. It was also random. Your ability can actually travel through countless distances, and you have also crossed the windless belt. Yang Qing said. Filled with deep suspicion, he asked loudly. I said he was random, and last time, when I activated the ability, it wasn't my initiative, maybe it was my passive behavior after I fell into a coma. Dylan's explained weakly. Yang Qing pressed his forehead with a slap, and felt a terrible headache. Looking at least 4 or 5 pairs of huge pupils in front of him, he felt bitter. Next time, don't use this skill again. I'd rather be caught by the sea soldiers. I also don't want to be swallowed by a group of sea kings and finally become a piece of shit. Let's think about it first, how to get past this level. Dylan's face was also a little ugly. He activated his ability just to gamble on the unknown, but he was blocked in the windless zone. The wooden boat stopped calmly on the sea. In the absence of wind, the sails did not move, and they could not move at all. Only when the sea kings moved, they would move forward a little according to the current. The boat can't move, and we can't deal with these sea kings. We have only one dead end. Moria said calmly. The boat will definitely not move. This is just the most ordinary wooden boat in the Chambord archipelago. Yang Qing said loudly, his eyes swept around dignifiedly. The sea kings were slowly swimming over, watching everything here. So, these sea kings, you can't deal with them, can you? Moria adjusted her glasses. Dylan's was lying on the deck, like a dead dog, unable to move. Although Yang Qing's physical condition became stable, it was obvious that he had no way to deal with the sea kings. My attack is a single unit. I focus on the strength of the point. The size of the sea king is too big, I can't do anything about it. Yang Qing shook his head, then he thought about his own fruit ability, and finally gave up. At present, this fruit ability does have a great effect on combat assistance. It can help him control all the movements around him. It is like installing a 360-degree third eye without dead ends, but facing this body there is still no way for the sea kings that are at least 30 meters long. Then, do you have the arrogance of the Overlord? Moria asked again. Yang Qing froze. He remembered that the Overlord color also has an effect on these sea kings, but he didn't, so he could only shake his head helplessly. There is nothing, it seems that I can only wait to die. Moria shrugged, sat calmly on the reclining chair, and flipped through her book again. Hey, why can you still read books so calmly? We're about to die, we're going to die. Robin shouted loudly, looking at the slowly approaching sea kings, very nervous. I haven't come yet, What are you in a hurry? Moria said calmly, leaving Robin completely speechless. Dyrance, are you all right? She turned her gaze to Dyrance again, who rolled her eyes. Do you look like I'm fine? Yang Qing didn't care about the different behaviors of the three people on the boat. To him, these three people really made him have the urge to beat them, especially Molia, a calm person, which made him go crazy. What kind of nerves does this person have to be so calm? Are you still human? Ah. Since only the domineering can deter these sea kings, then I will try it. Yang Qing strode towards the bow, facing these sea kings squarely. At this moment, his physical strength has been exhausted, and it is completely insufficient to support a battle. However, there was no fear in his eyes. What he possessed was incomparable purity, firm belief, and great courage. It is for the sake of these three people that I must succeed too. A flash of light flashed in Yang Qing's eyes. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Incomparably bright light, an invisible momentum rose from his body. After a few steps, he came to the bow of the boat, and with a pinch of his thumb and middle finger, he made a crisp, pop, sound. A mask with a radius of 10 meters appeared, then recovered at a very fast speed and gathered on Yang Qing's body. Master yourself. Since this fruit ability can help him master all the conditions around him, if the scope is narrowed, then naturally he can also control his own situation clearly. Really, bad. Glancing at the situation in his own body, Yang Qing sighed helplessly. His cell vitality was reduced to the lowest level, and he would utter an unsupportive chirping all the time, as if the next moment his whole body would be paralyzed, falling into powerlessness. I really need a good rest. But, not now. With all his strength, he took another step forward. Yang Qing's eyes were sharply aimed at the sea kings in front of him,